Chapter 960. Given how intelligent the ancient Chaos Great Emperor was, how could he not tell that Ning Fan was lying? However, he also understood that the reason why Ning Fan said that was because he did not want him to worry. Perhaps the Dark Race did not personally take action against Ning Fan, but those forces who wanted to curry favor with the Dark Race could no longer sit still. He had yet to extinguish his Tao, and yet others dared to bully his disciple. If his Tao was completely extinguished, what kind of situation would his disciple be in? The Purple Dough celestial realm used to be so powerful and prosperous. Back then, the Lai Yuan sect's reputation had been so great. Thinking back to when he, the ancient Chaos Emperor, was at his peak, he could suppress the Dark Race with a wave of his hand. No one dared to bully his disciple. But now, the Purple Dipper celestial realm had fallen apart, and the entire Lai Yuan sect had perished in battle. The last descendants of the Purple Dipper celestial realm were trapped in the illusionary world, unable to walk out. They did not dare to walk out, and they were in a sorry state. He, ancient Chaos, had died in battle in ancient times. He had relied on the help of the Divine Void Ancestor to leave behind an illusion that hadn't been destroyed. Although he had struggled to survive in the illusionary world until now, he would eventually perish. He was no longer the almighty ancient Chaos Emperor. He no longer had the power to suppress the Dark Races. The destruction of his Tao was almost irreversible. The only thing he was worried about was the successor he had accepted after his death, Ning Fan. Was he in such a sorry state that he couldn't even protect his disciple? All of you withdraw for now. I want to speak with my disciple, and I don't want anyone to listen. Ancient Chaos killing intent gradually vanished, and he revealed a dejected expression as he instructed Luozi and the others. After hearing what Ning Fan said, Xiang Bozi, Shui Mining and LV Feng did not stay any longer. They parted ways with Ning Fan and returned to the 8th level of the Divine Tomb. Outside of the Palace Tomb, there was only Ning Fan and his disciple, Ancient Chaos, standing opposite each other. The Ancient Chaos Great Emperor was obviously extremely weak, but he still raised his hand and helped Ning Fan block the Devil Chi of the 9th floor. This kind of invisible concern made Ning Fan feel even sadder. As long as there is a chance, he would not wish for the chaotic ancient Tao to be destroyed. However, he did not know if there was still a chance to save this old man. I'm close to the end of my Tao, but there's still one thing I'm worried about, and that's you. You've done very well. You haven't brought shame to the Lai Yuan sect's name. It's only been 100 years. And you've actually managed to cultivate the Jie clan's bloodline to the realm of 3 stars real blood. With such aptitude, even in the primordial era, you would be able to look down upon all heroes. With your current strength that is comparable to the ancient immortal venerables, you might not be able to do as you please in the illusory world, but you can protect yourself. I wouldn't be worried if someone else bullied you, but this time it was the Dark Race. The 10,000 ancient immortal venerables aren't strong enough to fight against the Dark Race. It's a pity that the primordial seal can't be passed to you. Otherwise, the Dark Race wouldn't dare to bully you. Ancient Chaos coldly humphed. He turned his hand and took out a scroll weaved with golden threads, showing it to Ning Fan's. The surface of the scroll looked ordinary, and there was no magical power flowing within it. However, in Ning Fan's eyes, it seemed to have the power to punish the heavens and earth. The moment it first appeared, it was as if it had replaced the heavenly Tao of this place, and could send down tribulations and punishments. There's no mistaking it. The power contained within this golden scroll is clearly the power of slaughter and punishment. However, it was different from the punishment power that Ning Fan had mastered. Ning Fan's punishment power was used to punish the barbarian race, while the punishment power in this scroll was used to punish other races. What is this? Ning Fan asked. In the past, when the immortal sovereign sent the last descendant of Zido into the illusory world, he left behind 3 ancient contracts. They are the Demon Mansion contracts, the Devil Summit contracts, and the 10 Clans contracts. Among them, the Demon Mansion contracts were obtained by the Lord of the Demon Mansion. With this contract, he can suppress all demons below the Quasi-Saint realm. The Devil Puppet contracts were obtained by the first Devil General under Great Emperor Mo Zhong. With this contract, he can suppress all devils below the Quasi-Saint realm. The contracts in my hands are the 10 Clans contracts. It exists specifically to suppress the 10 clans of the Realm Guarding clan. The reason why the dark race is afraid of me is because of this item. With this item, as long as I am still alive, I can use this contract to suppress all divine cultivators below the quasi-saint realm. The dark race are all divine cultivators. That's why they are afraid of me. Unfortunately, this contract can't be passed on to others. It will only perish together with me. If it's not because of this, I can pass this contract to you. In that case, the dark race will certainly be wary of you and won't dare to bully you. What a pity. Ancient Chaos let out a long sigh. He kept the ancient contract and said, I've been living in the divine tomb for many years. I've long been tired of this kind of life where I'm neither alive nor dead. To me, the death of my Tao might be a kind of release. The only thing I'm worried about is that the dark race will come to bully you after my Tao is extinguished. The dark race is like an ant to me. To you, the dark race is still a colossus. If I can live for a few more years, I can intimidate the dark race for you. Unfortunately, my lifespan has come to an end. The battle against that great devil has exhausted all of my remaining strength. Is there really no way to stop the death of my Tao? Ningfan asked with a solemn expression. There's no way. Ancestor Divine Void built the divine tomb for me. It's already a heaven-defying item. He can keep one of my illusions alive, just like the shadow of the mountains and seas of the barbarian race. However, even this can't stop the death of my illusions. Little friend Xiang has used a lot of innate spiritual herbs to save me. However, even innate spiritual herbs aren't enough to prolong my life. Before Ancient Chaos could finish his words, Ningfan suddenly asked, if there's a heaven-opening grade spiritual herb, can it save me? Heaven-opening grade spiritual herb? Ancient Chaos was stunned. Then he shook his head and chuckled. There isn't even a sage in the illusory dream world. How can there be a heaven-opening grade spiritual herb? Even a sage might not necessarily have that kind of spiritual herb. Besides, not just any kind of heaven-opening grade spiritual herb can prolong one's life. The chances of this happening are really slim. We can't force it. Ancient Chaos did not mean what he said, but Ningfan was listening intently. A sage might not necessarily have it. In other words, it's still possible for a sage to have it. Isn't the Supreme Pill Sacred Region just a place where a sage grows and gathers herbs? Would there be a spiritual herb that could prolong Ancient Chaos life there? Originally, Ningfan just wanted to fulfill his promise and accompany Ouyang Nuan to the Supreme Pill Sacred Region. However, this time he had another goal. After meeting you this time, I will continue to sleep. In this way, I can certainly make the illusion last longer. It should be able to last for another 10 years. Within 10 years, the dark race won't dare to take action personally. After 10 years, I won't be able to protect you anymore. You might not be able to protect yourself. Ancient Chaos smiled bitterly. He reached out his hand and patted Ningfan's shoulder. His expression was filled with worry and helplessness. Ningfan's eyes, however, lit up. The Supreme Pill Sacred Region will open in another 5 years. If I can find the heaven-opening grade spiritual herb inside, I might be able to save Great Emperor Ancient Chaos in time. Sure enough, I must go to the Supreme Pill Sacred Region. Ningfan secretly kept this matter in mind. However, there was another matter that he was puzzled about. Thus he asked about the drastic change in the Divine Tomb 10 years ago. That ancient Great Devil had fought against Great Emperor Ancient Chaos before. Thus, Great Emperor Ancient Chaos certainly knew more than Xiang Bozi. That Great Devil was suspected to be the missing Devil Lord from the Devil Conferral Summit. However, no one knew his exact identity. No one knew why he came to the Divine Tomb either. Speaking of which, if it wasn't for that great devil who suddenly appeared and fought against Ancient Chaos would not have died so quickly. Thinking of this, Ningfan frowned. He felt a lot of hostility towards that ancient great devil whose identity was unknown. If I'm not mistaken, that great devil should be Old Devil Blackwing of the Fire Wings clan. He is the 7th Devil General of the Devil Conferral Summit. Just a sentence from Ancient Chaos confirmed the identity of that great devil. As expected, it was the great devil of the Devil Conferral Summit. The great devils of the Devil Conferral Summit either died in battle, or went missing. This old devil Blackwing was exactly that devil lord who had gone missing. He used the devil cavity to directly enter the divine tomb. Devil cavity. It was a kind of lost divine ability of the ancient fiend gods. It could directly open a passage and travel between worlds. Ning Fan's expression changed slightly. He had also read about the devil cavity in some ancient books. However, he did not expect that the great devil did not enter the divine tomb through the devil well. Instead, he walked out of the devil cavity. His chi is very strange. It feels like a living person but also like a dead person. When he faced me, he did not seem to have the consciousness of his true body. His purpose of coming to the divine tomb seems to be the ancient contract. He once tried to tempt me to go with him, wanting to borrow the contract of the 10 clans. However, I rejected him and fought him out of anger. Unfortunately, he was no match for me. I forced him to retreat, and even destroyed his devil cavity. As a result, he has lost his devil cavity. It will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens if he wants to cross the boundary and enter the divine tomb again. Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn. It turned out that old devil Blackwing's purpose was actually the ancient contract that ancient chaos possessed. Since the contract could not be given to others, it could only be used by ancient chaos himself. That was why old devil Blackwing requested ancient chaos to do so. After he was rejected, he attacked ancient chaos forcefully but was defeated. Why did the great devil who disappeared in the ancient war suddenly appear and come here to seek the power of the ancient contract? Ning Fan faintly felt that this matter was not as simple as it seemed. However, he did not have the power to verify it. After talking about the ancient great devil, ancient chaos then asked about Ning Fan's experiences in the past 100 years. Ning Fan told ancient chaos about his experiences in the desolate wasteland. When he heard that a certain eyeball monster was still alive, ancient chaos's face darkened as if he had recalled something bad. He only had one woman whom he loved the most in his life. Her name was Hiyao. There was once an extremely wretched eyeball monster who dared to peep at Hiyao when she was bathing. Fortunately, ancient chaos discovered him in time and gave him a good beating. When he heard that the wretched old friend of his was still alive, ancient chaos felt relieved after his expression darkened. When he heard that Ning Fan had joined forces with the strange eyeball to kill old ancestor Enmo, Great Emperor Ancient Chaos actually threw his head back and laughed heartily. Obviously, he was very happy. Enmo was the biggest trader of the Purple Dipper Immortal Domain. Countless Purple Dipper Immortal cultivators wanted to kill him. Who would have thought that he would die in the hands of his own disciple? Enmo had really taken in a good disciple. Ning Fan did not hide the fact that he had become the barbarian god and obtained the heaven-opening weapon from Great Emperor Ancient Chaos. As soon as he heard that Ning Fan had become the 10th barbarian god and obtained the 6th fragment of the god exterminating shield, even with the Ancient Chaos Great Emperor's mental state, he could not help but be shocked. Even when Ancient Chaos was at his peak, he didn't have the chance to own a heaven-opening treasure. Ning Fan was lucky enough to get one. This disciple's luck was much better than his. Moreover, he had actually become the barbarian god who stood above tens of thousands of people in the ancient barbarian tribe. If he is in the true world, his status would probably be even more distinguished than many incipient saints. The only problem was that this heaven-opening artifact had been damaged in the battle against Enmo, so it had to be repaired. A heaven-opening artifact is different from ordinary magic treasures. After it is damaged, it can repair itself. However, in the process of repairing itself, it must absorb the power of the heaven-opening stone. The heaven-opening stone is then used to refine a heaven-opening artifact. It is divided into 4 grades: low grade, mid-grade, high grade and supreme grade. The heaven-opening stones above the mid-grade are as precious as heaven-opening spiritual herbs. As for the low-grade heaven-opening stones, they are slightly more common. Many of them are used to refine supreme-grade innate magic treasures. For an ancient force like the Godly Void Pavilion, perhaps they might have heaven-opening stones. It turns out that a heaven-opening artifact can repair itself. However, the process of repairing itself requires the use of heaven-opening stones. Ning Fan thought to himself, I'll ask Senior Xiang Bozi later to see if the Godly Void Pavilion has such an item. If they do, I can buy some. Great Emperor Ancient Chaos was too weak. After speaking for a long time, he showed signs of fatigue. Seeing this, Ningfan did not say anything else. After sending Ancient Chaos Great Emperor to sleep again, he returned to the 8th level of the Divine Tomb. When he arrived, his heart was heavy. Now he had a glimmer of hope. His expression became much more relaxed. At least, he could go to the Supreme Pill Sacred Region to search for it. After all, that place was the herb-gathering place of saints. There might be some heaven-opening spiritual herbs there. Perhaps Great Emperor Ancient Chaos can still be saved. Such a thought lingered in his mind. It actually gave Ningfan a feeling that the samsara void tribulation was about to befall him. Sure enough, his samsara void tribulation required him to grasp something and bear that burden. Only then could he achieve a breakthrough. After returning to the 8th level, Ningfan discussed with Xiang Bozi for a while again, as if they had made an agreement. After that, Lv1 went to look for Ningfan. It was unknown what he said to Ningfan, but both of them seemed to have made an agreement. After that, Ningfan left the Divine Tomb, and went to Little Demoness' new abode, the Godly Void Pavilion's chief pavilion lord residence, to rest for the time being. After not seeing her for 100 years, Little Demoness' status was no longer the same as before. She was no longer a sacrificial offering nor a nominal young pavilion lord. Instead, after giving an order to Xiang Bozi, she was promoted to be the chief pavilion lord of the 4 pavilions of the Godly Void Pavilion. She was in charge of all the affairs of the 4 pavilions. The original 4 pavilion lords all had to obey the orders of the chief pavilion lord. Little Demoness had actually become the chief pavilion lord of the Godly Void Pavilion. Ningfan was a little surprised. This status was extremely honorable. It was enough to mobilize all the experts below the venerated immortal realm in the Godly Void Pavilion. Currently, Little Demoness only needed to give an order, and she would be able to summon 17 to 18 shredding thoughts. And she conged to listen to her orders. To outsiders, the Godly Void Pavilion was the strongest force in Eastern Heaven. As the chief pavilion lord of the Godly Void Pavilion, Little Demoness was a figure who was at the same level as a sect master. She was considered as a first-class respected figure. After inheriting the position of the chief pavilion lord, Little Demoness immediately became busy. All the important matters of the 4 pavilions needed her to make decisions. Just like that, she had been busy for 90 years. It was only until the Divine Tomb experienced a drastic change, and Ancient Chaos was on the verge of Tao extinction, that she pushed away all her official duties, and appointed the 4 pavilion lords to temporarily take charge of the pavilion. As for herself, she made a request to the 2 Divine Void Emperors to enter the lowest level of the Divine Tomb, and personally take care of Great Emperor Ancient Chaos. Great Emperor Ancient Chaos was Ningfan's master, while she was Ningfan's woman. Her master was on the verge of Tao extinction, but his disciple was not by his side. As Ningfan's woman, she had the obligation to take care of her master on his behalf. Compared to her husband's matters, nothing else was important. I've been busy for 10 years taking care of my master on behalf of my husband. How are you going to repay me? As soon as she returned to the chief pavilion lord's residence, Little Demoness immediately dismissed all of her maids and snuggled lazily in Ningfan's embrace, sniffing his scent greedily. After not seeing him for 100 years, she naturally missed Ningfan. She missed his scent. It was a very heavy smell of blood. He must have killed a lot of people on his way to the Divine Void Pavilion. In these 100 years, he must have experienced a lot of dangers, right? Although there was a lazy and sly smile hanging on her lips, Little Demoness felt a little heartache. She felt sorry for the stubborn young man in the past. He had walked step by step to where he was today. Others only knew about Yujun's glory, but no one knew about the hardships he faced. She knew that she had watched this young man grow up from 7 Apricot City to where he was today. What do you want to repay me? Ningfan caressed the black hair of the lady in his embrace. His heart was filled with warmth. I want to challenge you, the successor of Ancient Chaos, once again with the identity of the successor of the Divine Void Pavilion. Little Demoness smiled evilly. With a tug, she directly rolled onto the bed with Ningfan. Before her black dress could be taken off, her fair and slender legs had already wrapped around Ningfan's waist. All right, The challenge she mentioned was actually referring to that aspect of the challenge. Ning Fan stayed in the chief pavilion lord's residence for 3 days. During these 3 days, he naturally planted a child relic in her, causing her cultivation base to improve tremendously. After not seeing her for 100 years, little Demona's cultivation base was already at the late human profound realm. Now with the power of the child relic, she directly broke through to the late ghost profound realm. She had no choice but to immediately go into seclusion to comprehend the ghost profound realm. Coincidentally, on the 4th day, Xiangbozi arrived. Thus, Ning Fan and little Demonis had a brief moment of intimacy before crossing the starry sky and leaving. It turned out that the conversation between Ning Fan and Xiangbozi that day was about the heaven opening stone. Unfortunately, there was no heaven opening stone in the Divine Void Pavilion. Otherwise, Xiangbozi would probably give Ning Fan a piece out of respect for ancient chaos. After Xiangbozi investigated for 3 days, he finally received news about the heaven opening stone. Thus, he immediately came to inform Ning Fan. On the other hand, after knowing that Ning Fan had returned, the Luo clan was also purchasing heavenly ingredients and earthly treasures from all over the place to prepare for the treatment of the Battle King. They still needed a few more days to prepare. Thus, Ning Fan did not immediately go to the Battle King Luo clan to save them. Instead, he tried to repair the god exterminating shield at once to increase his self-protection power. Facing a colossal being like the Dark Race, Ning Fan really did not have much confidence without the god exterminating shield. The heaven opening stone that little friend wants is already in progress. Even though the Divine Void Pavilion doesn't have it, I have a good friend in the past who seems to have a low-grade heaven opening stone that has yet to be used. That person's Dao name is Mu Song. He is not well known in the Eastern Heaven. Perhaps you have never heard of him before. However, he has a disciple whom you must have heard of. He is the master of Emperor Tsong. Emperor Tsong's master. Ning Fan's eyes turned slightly serious. He had heard of Emperor Tsong before. He had even seen him with his own eyes. He was one of the emperors who besieged the Sun Luo clan in the past. He had the profound cultivation base of the 8 Tribulations realm. In terms of strength, he seemed to be slightly stronger than the Divine Void Emperor. Emperor Tsong's master was certainly not an insignificant figure. Besides, since he could become friends with Xiangbozi, it was highly possible that he was also a quasi-saint realm expert. On the surface, there were only a dozen or so emperors in the Eastern Heaven. However, there were many old monsters who lived in seclusion. Sure enough, one should not underestimate the heroes of the world. Mu Song has been meditating in seclusion all year round. Ordinary cultivators don't even have the qualifications to meet him. His personality is eccentric, and you can't judge him with common sense. If it's a normal transaction, I have the confidence to exchange the heaven opening stone from his hands. However, if he is unwilling to exchange, I can't force him either. Xiangbozi smiled bitterly. He failed to fulfill the last wish of his ancestor by saving Great Emperor Ancient Chaos. Now that the successor of Ancient Chaos had other requests, he would certainly do his best to help him. To be honest, it would be nice to say that Mu Song was eccentric. To put it bluntly, he was hard to get along with. If it wasn't necessary, he would not want to visit this Taoist Mu Song. If it wasn't because the heaven opening stone was too rare, he would not have brought Ning Fan all the way to Mu Song's cave dwelling. Xiangbozi did not ask why Ning Fan needed the heaven opening stone. He vaguely guessed that Ning Fan probably wanted to refine a powerful magic treasure. That was why he needed this item. As the successor of Ancient Chaos, Ning Fan indeed needed to increase his strength to protect himself when Ancient Chaos was approaching the Dao Extinction realm. The reason why he was willing to help Ning Fan was not only because of Ning Fan's identity as the successor of Ancient Chaos, but also because they got along very well. He admired this young man who was also a heavenly being realm cultivator. If I can get the heaven opening stone, I won't forget Senior's kindness. Ning Fan's tone was very polite. He had a very good impression of Xiangbozi. Without this person's guidance, even if he absorbed the Chen tree's will, he would not be able to break through to the 2nd level of the heavenly being realm so smoothly. Without the expedition order given by this person, he would not even be able to enter the wild ancient region. Without this person's support, How could little Demonis be promoted to the chief pavilion lord of the godly void pavilion? This was Xiangbozi's support and protection for little Demonis. To a large extent, it was also because of Ning Fan that he made such a decision. During the Tao extinction realm of ancient chaos, Xiangbozi had been very busy. Whether it was under the order of the divine void ancestor or not, Ning Fan felt grateful towards Xiangbozi. This time, Xiangbozi had once again put in a lot of effort for the sake of the heaven opening stone. This made Ning Fan feel rather touched. Now that ancient chaos was approaching the Tao extinction realm, the dark race was always coveting Ning Fan in the dark. Even if a wise person did not try to curry favor with the dark race, they would also not try to befriend Ning Fan at this moment to avoid getting themselves into trouble. Xiangbozi chose to help Ning Fan and ancient chaos at this moment. It was almost like he was standing on the opposite side of the dark race. Of course, Ning Fan would not ignore this kind intention of his. Even though he addressed Xiangbozi as senior, he had already taken him as a friend despite the difference in age in his heart. Both of their flying speed was not slow. Under their full speed, it took them less than half a day to travel across countless star regions and arrive at the edge of a green sea of stars. The two of them flew all the way into the Sea of Stars. At the center of the Sea of Stars, there was an immortal island in the sea. The air was filled with the fragrance of pine leaves. The two of them descended towards the immortal island. As soon as they landed, two young boys drilled out of the soil and said with arrogant expressions, "Who are you cultivators? How dare you trespass on my island? Don't you know that the lord of my island has been in seclusion for a long time?" As soon as their voices fell, their bodies glowed with green light. Two early shedding void realm auras spread out from their bodies and pressed down on Ning Fan and Xiangbozi. This kind of aura naturally could not threaten Ning Fan and Xiangbozi at all. Ning Fan stood still and let the aura surge towards him. However, it turned into a gentle breeze when it reached 3 zhang in front of him. Xiangbozi was even more decisive. He directly struck out 2 rays of light from his finger at lightning speed and killed the 2 young boys. After the 2 young boys died, they directly turned into a pile of soil. It turned out that they were not living humans but clay figurines. This Musang likes to make clay figurines every day. If there are any outsiders who want to meet him, they will have to kill all the clay figurines along the way. Only then would they be qualified to meet him. After that, if you see any clay figurines again, you can just kill them directly. If you are not ruthless and decisive enough, it will make Musang dissatisfied. Chapter 961. Clay figurines. Ning Fan nodded and kept Xiangbozi's advice in mind. Then, his eyes swept across the plants on the wooden island. He felt that every single blade of grass and tree had an indescribable sense of transcendence, as if it was incompatible with all the noise in the outside world. The rustling sound of the wind blowing through the pine forest was mixed with the vague sound of a bell that seemed to be near and far. Every time the sound of the bell reverberated in Ning Fan's sea of consciousness, his mind would become clearer and his cultivation base would improve a little. Even though the improvement was not much, it was enough to show that the sound of the bell was extraordinary. The only thing that made Ning Fan frown was that the bell actually had the intention of advising people to avoid the world. Ning Fan was not bewitched by the bell because of his high cultivation base. If ordinary true immortals were here, they would probably have the thought of converting to Buddhism as soon as they heard the bell. They would abandon everything in the mortal world and choose to enter the Buddhist gate. What a powerful bell. It's my first time seeing such a level of Buddhist ability since I started cultivating the Tao. Ning Fan praised. This bell contains the power of the absolute leakage connection, one of the 6 abilities of the Buddhist gate. Most of the high-level Buddhist cultivators live in the Western Heaven. There are almost no Buddhist cultivators in the Eastern Heaven who have cultivated the absolute leakage connection. It's normal that you have never seen this ability before. Xiangbozi explained with a smile. The 6 abilities of the Buddhist gate? Ning Fan was slightly stunned. He did not know much about Buddhist cultivators. It was his first time hearing this term. The 6 abilities of the Buddhist gate are the heavenly eye connection, heavenly ear connection, mind connection, destiny connection, divine feet connection and absolute leakage connection. The heavenly eye connection cultivates the Dharma eye connection, while the heavenly ear connection cultivates the spiritual sense connection. The mind connection can peek into a person's heart. The destiny connection can see the changes of samsara in the past and the present. The divine feet connection can generate the power of hundreds of millions of Dharma bodies. The absolute leakage connection can cut off all the entanglements in the world. Musong's bell contains the power of the absolute leakage connection. If your cultivation base is not strong enough, you will definitely convert to Buddhism after hearing this bell and abandon the mortal world. Xiangbozi explained while leading Ningfan to the center of the wooden island. It wasn't that he couldn't fly, but that Taoist Musong had a strange temperament. He didn't like people flying in his territory. Xiangbozi had come with a request, so naturally he wouldn't violate the taboo. The wooden island was not big. It was just a small island with a radius of 10 li. Looking from the outside, it looked like a ferocious tiger hiding in the sea of stars. The island was filled with luohan pines, which were hundreds of ancient pines that were several tens of zhang tall. The center of the center. From time to time, some mudmen would emerge from the surface of the pine forest and attack Ningfan and Jian Wushuang without hesitation. In the beginning, these clay figurines all had the cultivation base of void shedding. Thus, they naturally could not stop Ningfan and Xiangbozi from advancing. Thus, they were easily killed by them. However, as time went on, even the thought-shattering clay man began to appear. Fan and Memory Li comma Li and said, Ling Ning, Ling. Ning Li was Ling Ning Ning said. Ning Feng King Fan was able. King Fan Ling Ning of Fan is. Ning Ning Dong as said Jiang Ling Ning said. Had. Naturally, the difference in strength between them and Ningfan was just too great. Thus, they were still easily killed by Ningfan. However, Ningfan still wore a solemn expression. This is the power of the mind connection. It can predict the thoughts of the opponent and make decisions in advance during a battle. Xiangbozi explained. It's the power of the mind connection. It can predict the thoughts of the opponent and make decisions in advance during a battle. It has endless uses. Xiangbozi explained. It's the 6 abilities of the Buddhist gate again, huh? In other words, these mudmen can see through my thoughts with the power of the mind connection? Ningfan's eyes narrowed. He did not want to let a group of mudmen see through his thoughts. The mind connection can only be effective when there is a huge gap between our cultivation bases. It can see through all your thoughts. With your immortal venerable cultivation base, even a 3rd-level quasi-Saint Buddha cultivator would not be able to see through your thoughts. These mudmen can only predict your next attack at most. They can't do anything else. Xiangbozi explained. I see. Knowing that the mind connection would not be able to see through his thoughts, Ningfan felt relieved. If everyone could see through his thoughts, the mind connection would be too terrifying. Speaking of which, his mind-reading technique was somewhat similar to the mind connection of the Buddhist gate. He wondered if the great Emperor Ancient Chaos had taken reference from the Buddhist gate when he created this ability. After walking along the pine forest for about 3 li, a holy virtue divine art steel suddenly appeared at the side of the path. The tortoise beast that was carrying the steel was vivid and lifelike. Vaguely, it was a demon corpse of the tortoise clan that had died countless years ago. However, the baleful qi that came rushing towards him could still be felt. The baleful qi was too strong. Ningfan could almost immediately tell that this tortoise beast that had died countless years ago had a cultivation base comparable to a 6th tribulation immortal emperor when it was alive. This Taoist Musong was really generous. He actually used an immortal emperor demon corpse to carry a steel. The steel on the tortoise beast's back was ordinary. There was nothing special about it. There were only 2 simple words on it. World deception. These 2 words were written in wild cursive. They were written with demon blood. Even now, the words were dark red as if blood could seep out from them. The words were filled with arrogance and domineering aura. They were like sharp swords that could not be ignored by others. On the back of the steel, there was a line of small words. I have been domineering for half of my life. Heaven is unfair, so I will be fair. There are evils in the world, so I will eliminate them. The inscription was Venerated Mu Nanzuan. The date was the year 934620, of the Heavenly Emperor's calendar. Ning Fan had no idea who venerated Mu Nanzuan was. However, he had heard of the Heavenly Emperor's calendar before. It was the calendar that was set by the Heavenly Emperor when the ancient Heavenly Court was first built 1,000,000,000 years ago. 1,000 years was like a snap of a finger in the cultivation world. Therefore, the calendar of the ancient Heavenly Court only used 10,000 years to record the years. Even though the ancient Heavenly Court had been destroyed a long time ago, many cultivators in the later generations still used this calendar. The date of the inscription was about 60 million years ago. Venerated Mu Nanzuan was Mu Song's common name, before he became the Heavenly Emperor. This stele was erected by him when he was still a quasi-emperor. Xiang Bozi explained. Ning Fan's eyes slightly moved. When that Taoist Mu Song was still a quasi-emperor, he had already killed an immortal emperor of the Turtle clan. So he erected this stele here? He's really a ruthless character. When he turned his head to look at the two words world deception, Ning Fan felt that these two words were sharp and domineering. It was imaginable how domineering Taoist Mu Song was before he became a sovereign. When he recalled the arrogant words heaven is unfair, so I will be fair. Ning Fan seemed to see the image of a Taoist who ruled the world and enforced justice on behalf of heaven. It turned out that the two words world deception meant to sweep away all the evils of the world, after a long time. Ning Fan followed Xiang Bozi into the depths of the pine forest. After walking for a while, he saw the second holy virtue divine art stele. This stele was just an ordinary stone stele made of a tortoise carrying a stele. It was not a real demon corpse. The two words world avoidance were engraved on the front of the stele. It was less murderous but more otherworldly. There was also a line of words engraved on the back of the stele. In my twilight years, I was stuck at the bottleneck of the 8th tribulation realm, unable to advance to the 9th tribulation realm. Because I went to the Western heaven, I listened to the Buddha's voice and comprehended the true meaning of world avoidance. I washed away all my sharpness and stopped caring about worldly affairs. Then, I cultivated to the peak emperor realm. The inscription was Great Emperor Zhang Mu. The date was 272. 26 million of the Western Heaven calendar. Needless to say, Great Emperor Zhang Mu was most likely the title of Taoist Mu Song's sovereign immortal emperor. As for the Western Heaven calendar, it was another calendar. After the ancient heavenly court was destroyed, Buddhist cultivators lived in the Western Heaven. Since the beginning of the calendar, it had been 300 million years. The date of the inscription on the stele was about 30 million years ago. This stele was erected by Mu Song when he was at the peak 9 tribulation realm. Xiang Bozi explained. Ning Fan looked at the second stele with a frown. Even though the first stele was domineering, it dared to complain about the unfairness of the world. It was not hard to imagine that Taoist Mu Song was a cultivator who took the rise and fall of the world as his own responsibility. Even though Ning Fan was not that kind of person, he had always had some respect for cultivators who cared about the world. However, this second stele was filled with negative Tao aura of avoiding the world. Ning Fan especially disliked the word world avoidance. In his life, whenever he encountered difficulties, he would always face them head-on. He would use force to overcome force and never give in. There was no such thing as world avoidance in his life. He did not look at the second stele for too long. If he did, his Tao heart might be contaminated by the world avoidance Tao intent on the stele. The two of them continued to walk deeper into the pine forest. At the deepest part of the forest, they saw an ancient temple. Outside the temple stood the third stele. This stele did not have a tortoise carrying a stele. Instead, it directly took a towering ancient tree, shaved off its surface and erected it as a wooden stele. Two words were engraved on the front of the stele. World isolation. On the back of the stele, a line of ancient and mysterious words was engraved. The purple star is on the left, the Big Dipper is on the right. When you open your eyes, it's a dream. When you close your eyes, it's emptiness. What does it mean? Ning Fan could not understand it at all. It was signed by Taoist Mu Song, and the time was 12 million years after opening your eyes. This time, Taoist Mu Song did not use the Western Heaven calendar to record the year. Instead, he used something that Ning Fan could not understand at all. What does it mean? Purple star on the left, Big Dipper on the right. When you open your eyes, it's a dream. When you close your eyes, it's emptiness. This sentence was the incantation that was engraved on the 9 stone gates of infinite desolation. It is said that this sentence contained a divine ability left behind by an immortal sovereign. Many immortal emperors knew about this sentence. However, none of them could comprehend the true meaning of this sentence. In the past, Musang went to the Western Heaven. After he came back, he cultivated the world isolation meditation and broke through to the peak 9 tribulation realm. However, he could not make any progress after that. Later on, he seemed to have comprehended something from this sentence and changed to cultivate the world isolation meditation. World isolation and world isolation were only one word apart, but they were fundamentally different. After that, he successfully broke through to the quasi-saint realm. Xiangbozi seemed to recall the past and said with a nostalgic expression, "I got to know Musang when we were young. Musang's innate talent was extremely high. No matter how hard I tried to catch up to him, my strength would always be slightly inferior to him. When he was hiding from the world, I was not as strong as him, but the gap between us was still small. When he was hiding from the world, the gap between us was already huge. After he went into seclusion, I was no longer his match. 7 million years ago, I had a duel with him. During that battle, I used 70% of my strength while Musang only used 30%. In the end, it ended in a draw." When he said that, Xiangbozi smiled bitterly. After not seeing Musang for 7 million years, the gap between him and Musang had probably widened. Moreover, he often suspected that Musang had already broken through to the second-level quasi-saint realm 7 million years ago. Otherwise, how could he fight him to a draw with just 30% of his cultivation base? Ningfan was slightly speechless. He did not expect that Musang's strength would actually be so terrifying after cultivating the world isolation meditation. Hiding from the world, seclusion. If these 3 words were to be regarded as the 3 stages of Musang's cultivation, Ningfan could understand the first 2 stages, but he could not understand the 3rd stage. What is seclusion? Were there such spells carved on the 9 stone gates of infinite wasteland? He was busy killing Enma with the eyeball monster, and did not pay attention to the infinite wilderness stone gate. What do you mean by the 12 millionth spring and autumn after opening my eyes? Ningfan asked again. Haha, this old man doesn't know the meaning of those words. If I could, this old man wouldn't be so much weaker than Musang, Xiangbozi said with a bitter smile. At this moment, the voice of an old-fashioned old man suddenly came from the meditation room in the ancient temple. It was cold and unapproachable. Xiangbozi, is it? I haven't seen you for 7 million years, yet you've come to this old man's place again. You want to lose to me again? Don't you feel ashamed? His tone was rather sharp, but Musang and Xiangbozi were friends, so there was no harm in exchanging a few words. Sure enough, Xiangbozi wasn't angered when he heard this. Instead, he scolded with a smile. I haven't seen you for 7 million years, and my cultivation has improved greatly. It won't be as easy for you to defeat me this time. Is that so? Then I'll have to ask you for advice later. However, before that, can you send those unrelated people away first? Ma. A sudden Buddha roar came from the meditation room, and went straight to Ningfan. It was just a ma sound, but it carried the aura force of dragons and tigers. Even with Xiangbozi's cultivation base, he felt a slight pain in his eardrums when he was affected by the Buddha roar. Ningfan, who was at the center of the Buddha roar, felt an unprecedentedly heavy pressure. Strong. Extremely strong. Even though Daoist Musang's cultivation base was not as terrifying as Yin Mo's, the pressure he brought to Ningfan was much heavier than when he fought against Yin Mo. After all, when he fought against Yin Mo in the past, it was the eyeball monster who took the lead. Ningfan did not have to bear Yin Mo's pressure alone. This time, however, it was different. It was as if there were billions of monks roaring at the same time. That roar reverberated in Ningfan's sea of consciousness like thunder. In an instant, Ningfan's face turned pale and black blood flowed out from his ears. This roar might not be as powerful as the roar of the ancient great devil, but it was not much weaker than the roar that would weaken 10 years later. Under this roar, Ning Fan felt unbearable pain all over his body. The ancient devil cultivation base in his body, in particular, was showing signs of melting like the snow in the early spring. What a domineering Buddha roar. It could actually dissolve the ancient devil power in Ning Fan's body with just a single roar. Wait. This little friend Ning is my friend. Today I also have something to ask of you. Quickly stop. Xiang Bozi's voice became anxious. He suddenly flicked his sleeves, as if he wanted to sweep away the Buddha roar in heaven and earth to save Ning Fan. Mu Song, on the other hand, let out a cold snort. He activated his ability, and the power of the Buddha roar instantly multiplied. Even with Xiang Bozi's cultivation base, he could not disperse the Buddha roar around Ning Fan. This young man has violated 2 of my taboos. My wooden island doesn't welcome him. Since he is your friend, I will let him go and spare his life. You can bring him away. I won't help you with the matter that you're asking for. He actually did not care about his friendship with Xiang Bozi and directly chased him away. It was obvious that he was a loner. Xiang Bozi smiled bitterly. He knew about Mu Song's taboos. Mu Song did not like outsiders entering his island. Bringing Ning Fan here had violated his first taboo. Mu Song did not like ancient devils. This was the usual attitude of Buddhist cultivators. He hated ancient devils. However, Ning Fan had the ancient devil chi on him. Thus, he had violated his second taboo. Sigh. At first, I thought that Mu Song would accept Ning Fan into the island for my sake. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have brought Ning Fan here. Xiang Bozi's smile became even more bitter. His original intention of coming here was not just for the heaven opening stone. He also wanted to introduce Ning Fan to Mu Song, a senior. How could he not bring Ning Fan here? One should know that even the dark races were wary of Mu Song. If Ning Fan was fortunate enough to gain Mu Song's favor and protection, the dark races would have to think twice before attacking Ning Fan again. Xiang Bozi's original intention was to let Mu Song become Ning Fan's backer in the future. Now, however, it seemed like he had outsmarted himself. Forget it. I will bring him away first. Quickly withdraw your Buddha roar. Don't destroy his cultivation base. Just as Xiang Bozi's words left his mouth, he saw Ning Fan withstanding the might of the Buddha roar. Amidst the tens of thousands of sound waves, Ning Fan took a step towards an extremely tricky and strange direction. It was just one step, but it left a dazzling golden footprint on the loose soil. Then it was the second step, the third step, step by step, step by step. This is the prestige character art of the Eastern demon ancestor. Xiang Bozi's eyes immediately turned solemn. Mu Song's soft exclamation also resounded from the monastery. In just the blink of an eye, Ning Fan had already taken 9 steps. After the 9th step, it was as if all the might of the Buddha roar had been crushed under his feet. As he stomped on the ground, it was as if he was stepping on the veins of heaven and earth. Immediately, circles of ripples of Tao laws spread out, forming tremors that shook the ancient pine on the island. With a cracking sound, an opening was torn open amidst the roars of countless Buddhas. All of a sudden, heaven and earth fell into silence. Mu Song's Buddha roar disappeared like smoke. Ning Fan had actually broken Taoist Mu Song's Buddha roar head-on with his current cultivation base. Impossible. According to the rumors in the outside world, the Rain Sovereign is just a newly advanced immortal venerable. How is it possible for him to withstand a roar from my master? The ones who exclaimed were the disciples of Taoist Mu Song in the monastery. All of them were either dressed like monks or Taoists. Among these disciples, the lowest cultivation base was at the early thought fragmentation realm, while the strongest ones were even immortal venerables of all ages. Other than these monks and Taoists, there was also an outsider. He was an elderly man in black robes. At this moment, his expression was gloomy. Reign immortal monarch. Ning Fan. What is he doing here? Besides, how did he withstand Senior Mu Song's roar? That strange footwork just now. Could it be the legendary prestige character art of the Eastern demon ancestor? Chapter 962. It was no wonder that the black-robed old man's expression turned gloomy. As a matter of fact, he had just received a message from one of his friends in the eastern sky who wanted to deal with this rain immortal monarch. However, he did not expect to bump into Ning Fan on the wooden island. If it wasn't because the place was not suitable, the black-robed old man would have captured Ning Fan on the spot and gifted him to his friend. No, I can't attack Ning Fan. The fact that Ning Fan broke Musang's roar with his strange footwork certainly made the black-robed old man fearful. However, what he was really afraid of was Xiang Bozi, who was standing beside Ning Fan. TSK, this person seems to be a quasi-saint like Senior Musang. Since he came with Ning Fan, there must be some kind of relationship between them. I can't attack Ning Fan in front of him. This is so hard. This old man is really unlucky. It's not easy to meet Ning Fan, but he actually has a quasi-saint with him. I can't attack him. I can't attack him. The black-robed old man's eyes flashed a few times and the gloominess in his eyes lessened slightly. He had decided not to attack Ning Fan on the wooden island. On the other side, Ning Fan's prestige word art of the Eastern demonic ancestor had broken Taoist Musang's roar, causing the cultivators in the temple to look at each other in astonishment. Sounds of gasping could be heard from time to time in the ancient temple. Even Taoist Musang, who used the Buddha roar, fell into a short silence. After a long time he spoke again. He was not angry at Ning Fan's action of breaking his Buddha roar. Instead he was happy. Humph! What an audacious little fellow. How dare he break my Buddha roar in my territory? Old monster Xiang. How long has it been since you last brought someone to see me? I can't remember. The little fellow last time seemed to be called Sun Luo. He dared to cut off my 4 emperor's arhut pines in front of me. The person you brought this time is not bad. Is he your new disciple? Even though his tone was still a little sharp, he did not conceal his admiration towards Ning Fan at all. He no longer had the slightest bit of disgust towards Ning Fan's identity as an ancient devil. This Taoist Musang's temperament is really a little strange. He is moody and unpredictable. Sun Luo. Hearing Musang mention Sun Luo, Xiang Bozi's expression became gloomy and somewhat bitter. It was as if Musang's words had reminded him of many things in the past, and the sorrow of Sun Luo's death in battle. However, after a slight pause, he finally replied with a smile. This child's name is Ning Fan. He is not my disciple. If you really want to talk about him, he can be considered as my friend despite the difference in age. Oh, this old man has been in seclusion for many years, and doesn't know anything about the outside world. I've never heard that you, who are unsociable and have few friends, have made a friend like this. Forget it. This child dared to break my Buddhist voice. Even if he is an ancient devil, he is still qualified to meet me. Come in. As soon as he heard what Ning Fan said, Xiang Bozi did not beat around the bush. He immediately brought Ning Fan into the ancient temple. There were already over 10 monks and disciples standing in 2 rows within the ancient temple, and they were welcoming the arrival of Xiang Bozi and Chen Shi. Ning Fan's eyes indifferently swept across these monks and Taoists. Among the cultivators here, there were only 3 of them who possessed the cultivation base of an eternal immortal venerate. Among the 3 of them, only one of them had attained the first eternal tribulation, while the other 2 were just newly advanced immortal venerates. Ning Fan's gaze fell upon the immortal venerate who had attained the first eternal tribulation. He was an elderly man in black robes. He was the one who had given him a gloomy look just now. He had a short and plump figure, and a mustache that was shaped like the shape of a handlebar. Every time his eyes moved, it was as if he was scheming something. Before entering the ancient temple, Ning Fan had already noticed that this elderly man in black robes was showing some hostility towards him. He did not care about the hostility that this person showed him. What he was concerned about was the slight sense of pressure that this elderly man gave him. Even though this elderly man only had the cultivation base of an eternal tribulation expert, he should not be underestimated. In terms of cultivation base alone, he was probably a little stronger than Ning Fan, who had the 3 stars True Blood realm. He belonged to the category of immortal venerates who were relatively strong. Ning Fan also had a clearer understanding of his own strength. Even though his cultivation base at the 2nd Blood realm was comparable to a First Tribulation immortal venerate, he was definitely not considered as a strong expert among the First Tribulation immortal venerates. Russell! Russell! Rustled. A gentle breeze suddenly blew past the ancient temple, causing a towering ancient pine tree at the center of the ancient temple to rustle. Countless jade-like green pine needles fell to the ground and turned into specks of green light. Within the green light, a bald old Taoist in green robes with his eyes closed slowly walked out. This elderly man's cultivation base was completely concealed, not revealing a single trace of it. However, every single movement he made was in line with the Tao. His body gave off a sense of perfection which was almost flawless. As soon as he appeared, a loud bell chime resounded in everyone's ears, buzzing incessantly. This person was none other than the master of the Wooden Island, Emperor Tsong's master, Taoist Mu Song. Welcome back, master. Welcome back, Senior Mu. All the disciples present immediately greeted Mu Song respectfully. The black-robed elderly man who was an outsider also greeted him respectfully without daring to show any neglect. There were only two people who did not greet Mu Song. One of them was Xiang Bozi, who was on the same level as Mu Song, and the other was Ning Fan. Taoist Mu Song attacked Ning Fan without saying a word. If it wasn't for Ning Fan's heaven-defying methods, his ancient devil cultivation base would have long been melted by Mu Song. In that case, even if Mu Song's cultivation base was heaven-defying, Ning Fan did not have the slightest bit of respect towards him. This little brat. Xiang Bozi smiled bitterly, thinking that Ning Fan was really a stubborn little fellow. He even dared to refuse greeting an expert at Mu Song's level. His behavior was really similar to Sun Luo in the past. He had 3 disciples in his life. One of them was the current Divine Space Emperor. Another was the current Void Space Emperor, and the last one was Sun Luo. All of them were brought to meet Mu Song, but only Sun Luo dared to challenge Mu Song in the territory of the Wooden Island. Also, Sun Luo was the only one who was admired by Mu Song the most. Mu Song had a strange temperament. He disliked people who followed the rules the most in his life. However, he liked people like Sun Luo who were arrogant and domineering. Of course, there was a precondition to being arrogant. One must have the capability to be arrogant. If Ning Fan did not have enough strength to support it, Mu Song would not even look him in the eye. As expected, when Taoist Mu Song saw that Ning Fan did not greet him, he was not angry. Instead, he was happy. A man that he admired must have a sense of bravery and sharpness. A person who kept what he had achieved could be tactful, but a person who pioneered must be strong and iron-blooded. A stubborn person like Ning Fan was the most to his liking. Ning Fan, huh? I didn't expect such a person to appear during the years when I was in seclusion. Taoist Mu Song had been in seclusion for many years. He did not care about what was happening in the outside world. He did not know that Sun Luo had already died, and he also did not know that a reign immortal monarch had appeared in the eastern heaven. He faced Ning Fan as if he was sizing him up. However, he did not open his eyes from the beginning to the end, which was rather strange. Xiang Bozi did not open his eyes because he was blind. Mu Song, on the other hand, did not open his eyes on purpose for some reason. Being scrutinized by Mu Song, who had his eyes closed, Ning Fan actually had a strange feeling. Taoist Mu Song clearly did not open his eyes. However, he gave Ning Fan the feeling that he had opened his eyes. His eyes were clearly open, but the moment he saw Mu Song, he had an illusion that his eyes were not open at all. The strangest thing was that the moment Mu Song stared at him, it was as if everything in this world had turned into an illusion except for Mu Song himself. Even a first-level quasi-saint like Xiang Bozi had turned into an illusion. Between heaven and earth, only Mu Song was real. Ning Fan did not understand why Mu Song would have such a strange look in his eyes. However, he was even more convinced that Mu Song's cultivation base was unfathomable. Old monster Xiang, since you brought this young man here, you can just tell me your request. If it's something within my capabilities and it doesn't go against my principles, I will certainly help you. This time, Mu Song's tone was no longer as unapproachable as before. Instead, it sounded rather polite. Xiang Bozi shook his head helplessly. He knew that Mu Song was being friendly because he found Ning Fan pleasing to his eyes. At that moment, he did not waste any more time, and directly told Mu Song about his request for the heaven-splitting stone. Did you guys come here because you heard that I have the heaven-splitting stone in my hands, and you want to ask for it? Musong's face immediately showed a strange expression. As for Musong's disciples, all of them looked at the black-robed old man. That's right. With your cultivation base, it's useless for you to keep that low-grade heaven-splitting stone. Why don't you make an exchange with me? I have a few pills here. I think they are qualified enough to exchange for your heaven-splitting stone. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiang Bozi waved his hand. A scarlet golden pill bottle immediately appeared in his hand. With a flick of his finger, the pill bottle flew towards Taoist Musong. Musong received the pill bottle and scanned it with his spirit sense. He felt a little tempted. However, in the next second, he burst into laughter and pushed the pill bottle back to Xiang Bozi. What a pity! Even though this pill is good, I don't have any extra heaven-splitting stones to exchange with you. I have already given the heaven-splitting stone that you want to someone else. Given it to someone else? Xiang Bozi was slightly surprised. When I was young, I owed a favor to a certain sect. Now the descendant of that sect has come to my sect and made 3 requests. I have already agreed to all of them. One of them is the heaven-splitting stone, which I have already given to this person. Brother Mu, can you tell me who exactly the heaven-splitting stone was given to? Xiang Bozi asked. That person is far away, but right in front of us. As soon as Musong finished speaking, the black-robed old man cursed inwardly. He walked out of the group and respectfully cupped his fists towards Xiang Bozi. Junior is old Wu Ba, the person who was given the heaven-splitting stone. Greetings, Senior Xiang. Oh, you know me? Xiang Bozi was slightly surprised. I didn't know you at first, but before my master passed away in meditation, he mentioned Senior to me. The Eastern Sky's quasi-saints can be counted on one's fingers. Senior must be the Xiang Bozi that my master spoke of, old Mr. Xiang. Old Wu respectfully said, his mustache giving off a somewhat wretched aura. Your master is Old Ancestor Black Luck. You're the disciple of Old Ancestor Black Luck, the current sect master of the Black Luck sect? Xiang Bozi's gaze towards old Wu Ba suddenly became a little strange. After a moment of silence, he asked again. How long has it been since the heaven-splitting stone was in your hands? It has been more than a month. I wonder if Senior still needs this stone. If you do, I am willing to give it to you. Old Wu Ba's expression was extremely respectful, but he was secretly sneering inwardly. He thought that this Senior Xiang Bozi would certainly not dare to take his heaven-splitting stone. As expected, when Xiang Bozi heard that the heaven-splitting stone had been in old Wu Ba's hands for more than a month, a helpless expression appeared on his face. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and said to Ning Fan, Sigh, it seems like you won't be able to get this heaven-splitting stone. If Musong gives it to someone else, I can still exchange it with something else. Then, I might still be able to get the heaven-splitting stone. However, if it falls into the hands of this person, I won't dare to accept it even if he gives it to me as a gift. This matter is very disadvantageous to you. Let's just forget about it. Ning Fan was confused. He did not know what Xiang Bozi was trying to say. Since Taoist Musong had given the heaven-splitting stone to old Wu Ba, and old Wu Ba was also willing to give it to him as a gift, why would Xiang Bozi not dare to accept it? Since Senior doesn't want my heaven-splitting stone, I will keep it for my own use. It's really bitter. I'm not good at refining treasures. I wonder if I can refine a decent magic treasure with this stone. As if he had already expected Xiang Bozi's reaction, old Wu Ba pretended to complain, but inwardly, he was smiling complacently. He did not dare to go against Xiang Bozi. After all, Xiang Bozi was a quasi-saint realm expert. If Xiang Bozi took a fancy to his item, he would be willing to give it to him. However, he was sure that Xiang Bozi would not dare to take it. He was the current sect master of the Black Fate sect, and the direct disciple of Old Ancestor Black Fate. His Dark Fate secret technique had already reached the peak. Even a quasi-saint realm expert would not dare to casually touch the things that he had touched. Even a quasi-saint realm expert would not dare to casually walk the path that he had walked on. All of this was related to his luck. He was the descendant of the Black Fate sect. What he cultivated was the black luck. In this world, the better one's luck was, the better one's luck would be. The worse one's luck was, the worse one's luck would be. Those who cultivated the dark fate demonic technique to the peak were the unluckiest people in the world. Not only were they unlucky themselves, but they could also pass on their bad luck to others. If one came into contact with such people, no matter how high one's cultivation was, it was possible that they would die in an accident while cultivating. Old Wu Ba's master, Old Ancestor Black Fate, was rumored to have an unlucky constitution that only appeared once every 5 million years. Although he was only a 6th tribulation immortal emperor at his peak, even quasi-saints had to be polite to him. Legend had it that a 7th tribulation immortal emperor wanted to attack Old Ancestor Black Fate. He traversed the starry sky in pursuit of Old Ancestor Black Fate. In the end, he encountered an emperor meteor shower that only appeared once every 10 million years. He was almost killed by the meteor shower in the starry sky. Legend had it that there was once an 8th tribulation immortal emperor who cursed Old Ancestor Black Fate. As a result, the power of his next great heavenly tribulation increased by several times for no reason. He almost died under the great heavenly tribulation. Legend had it that there were once 12 sects that joined forces to deal with Old Ancestor Black Fate. They agreed on a date to send out their troops. However, on the day before the troops were sent out, all the sects encountered a disaster that only appeared once every 10,000 years. In the end, they were unable to send out their troops to deal with Old Ancestor Black Fate. Legend had it that Old Ancestor Black Fate was in urgent need of a certain innate spiritual medicine for his cultivation. As he had nowhere to look for it, he directly went to a secret race and asked for the medicine. If the race refused to give him the medicine, he refused to leave. That secret race was afraid that Old Ancestor Black Fate would bring disaster upon himself. Thus he directly gave him the spiritual medicine and sent him away. Legend had it that Old Ancestor Black Fate had once generously given 100 million Tao crystals to a certain cultivation sect. In the end, all those who obtained the Tao crystals died in various natural and man-made disasters within the next 10 years. There were just too many legends about Old Ancestor Black Fate. However, because he was a star of calamity, any mention of his name might bring about a calamity. Thus, very few people in the 4 heavens would talk about him. His deeds were also rarely spread. It was also Ning Fan's first time hearing that there was a freak like Old Ancestor Black Fate in this world. Moreover, no one knew that Old Wu's unlucky physique was even more outstanding than Old Ancestor Black Fate. This person had failed 37 times in the harmonious spirit realm, 122 times in the core formation realm, 369 times in the nascent soul formation realm, and 971 times in the spirit severing realm. The further he progressed, the more failures he had to face. It was unknown how many bumps and dangers he had to go through to the eternal tribulation realm. However, the more unlucky he was, the more those who were familiar with him feared him. Even Taoist Musang felt somewhat helpless when someone like this came knocking on his door. However, out of consideration for his friendship with Patriarch Black Luck, he agreed to 3 of Old Wu's requests. He even gave the heaven-splitting stone to Old Wu. Unfortunately, Old Wu was actually very interested in the Tao of Wood of the island, and wanted to stay here to comprehend it. Some of the disciples of the island wanted to chase him away, but they directly encountered various natural and man-made disasters. Thus, no one dared to bother with him anymore. Musang's cultivation base was profound. He was not afraid of being implicated by Old Wu's bad luck. Thus, he had no choice but to let Old Wu stay on the island. I didn't expect Old Monster Xiang to come for the heaven-splitting stone. What a pity. With Old Monster Xiang's cultivation base that has yet to attain the 2nd tier, I'm afraid he will have to take a huge risk to take the item from Old Wu. As for that Ning Fan, his cultivation base is even weaker. I'm afraid that just touching Old Wu's heaven-splitting stone will attract all kinds of natural and man-made disasters. They can't take the stone. Taoist Musang shook his head slightly. You are Rain Immortal Monarch, aren't you? You also want my heaven-opening stone? Meeting each other is fate. If Rain Immortal Monarch needs this item, I am willing to give it to you. Old Wu rolled his eyes and said to Ning Fan all of a sudden. Ning Fan had Xiang Bozi to protect him. Even though he was instructed to do so, he did not dare to attack Ning Fan in front of a quasi-saint. However, it was not that he could not scheme against Ning Fan. He could see that Ning Fan did not know much about his identity as a member of the Black Fate sect. It was not surprising. The entire Four Heavens had always kept the Black Fate sect a secret. Whoever mentions it would be unlucky. It was not strange at all that Ning Fan did not know about the Black Fate sect. The bad luck of his Black Fate sect was inherited from the great ancestor of Sin Li, who was the clan with the dirtiest luck in this world. It was the Fu Li clan, which had been extinct for a long time. Among the members of the Fu Li clan, who had the dirtiest luck, it was the Sin Li clan, the sinner of the Fu Li clan. Among the members of the Sin Li clan, who had the dirtiest luck, it was the ancestor of the Sin Li clan, the Lord Evil God, who was given the title of the strongest Sin Li. His Black Fate sect worshipped the corpse of the ancestor of the Sin Li clan. Since he was young, he had been absorbing the luck of the corpse to cultivate. Whoever touches his luck will be unlucky. If he uses some abilities to communicate with heaven and earth, whoever touches his luck will die. It was definitely not a lie. The reason why he gave Ning Fan the heaven opening stone was actually a vicious scheme. He wanted to make Ning Fan suffer a series of disasters after he obtained the stone and die in the Eastern Heaven. He was fond of living an extravagant life of debauchery and debauchery. He once received the hospitality of a low-level cultivator on a certain cultivation planet, and became friends with that low-level cultivator. That low-level cultivator had yet to attain the true cultivation realm. Thus, he was really not worthy of his attention. However, his pill refinement skills were superb, and he was also famous in the Eastern Heaven. That person even used all his means to flatter him in every possible way, making him feel overjoyed. In the end, that person agreed to do one thing for him in this lifetime. That low-level cultivator was the sect master of the pill sect. It had already been a few days since Ning Fan returned to the Eastern Heaven. His fearsome name had already spread to the ears of those who were observant in the Eastern Heaven. After knowing that Ning Fan was already an immortal venerated throughout the ages, who was the one who was the most afraid of? The answer was the sect master of the pill sect. The sect master of the pill sect had once issued a bounty on Ning Fan's head. Even though that bounty had been cancelled by the Slaughter Palace a long time ago, the two of them still became sworn enemies. The sect master of the pill sect had superb pill refinement skills. He had a lot of friends in the Eastern Heaven immortal world. 100 years ago, he was not afraid of Ning Fan's reputation. After all, Ning Fan had just made a name for himself in the Eastern Heaven at that time. However, soon after, the news that Ning Fan was the successor of the ancient Chaos Emperor spread. When he heard that the ancient Chaos Emperor was still alive, the sect master of the pill sect felt as if his heart had died. He thought that a great calamity was about to befall him. Thus, he spent 100 years in peace while trembling with fear. Then he heard that the ancient Chaos Emperor was on the verge of his Tao extinction. The dark race certainly would not let Ning Fan go. As soon as he heard this news, the sect master of the pill sect was naturally overjoyed. If this news is true, Ning Fan would become the public enemy of the Eastern Heaven. Countless old monsters would be willing to attack Ning Fan in order to please the dark race. His fear of Ning Fan decreased day by day. However, at this moment, the shocking news of Ning Fan reappearing in the Eastern Heaven and slaughtering his enemies spread. Ning Fan had returned. Moreover, he had reappeared in the Eastern Heaven in a shocking manner. Before the ancient Chaos Emperor was destroyed, the dark race would not really attack Ning Fan because they were afraid of him. Only a few forces who were blind would attack Ning Fan. Now Ning Fan already had the cultivation base of an eternal immortal venerate. He was not afraid of those forces' provocations at all. Large numbers of empty space dwellers and broken sense realm cultivators died in Ning Fan's hands. Even the newly advanced immortal venerate old ancestor De Yun died tragically in Ning Fan's hands. Thus the sect master of the pill sect panicked. With Ning Fan's current cultivation base, he could totally annihilate the pill sect before the ancient Chaos Emperor's Tao extinction if he wants to settle old scores. No, I don't want to die. Thus he decided to make the first move. He made use of the connections he made in the pill refinement realm to send out invitations to countless experts to form an alliance to kill Ning Fan. Those real old monsters would either respect their identities or be wary of the ancient Chaos Emperor. Thus, They would not respond to the pill sect's call. However, there were still countless old monsters who hoped to express their goodwill to the dark race through this action. If a sect or a clan was not Ningfan's opponent, then what about the 10 sects and 10 clans? So what if there were 100 sects and 100 clans? Moreover, the sect master of the pill sect even promised that he was about to concoct a sovereign pill. If anyone helps him to kill Ningfan, he would gift the sovereign pill to that person. This matter caused another uproar in the Eastern Heaven. Is the Eastern Heaven immortal world about to give birth to a sovereign pill refinement master? If the sect master of the pill sect can really become a sovereign pill refinement master, even a colossal being like the dark race would not ignore the value of his existence. More and more old monsters were tempted and responded to the call of the sect master of the pill sect. There were even a small number of immortal venerables from the ancient times who had also made up their minds and decided to get involved in this matter. Thus, they responded to the call of the sect master of the pill sect. Just when Ningfan was unaware of it, a huge anti-Ning alliance had already taken shape. Old Wu had also received the message from the pill sect. Originally, he wanted to go to the anti-Ning alliance to join in the fun. Coincidentally, he met Ningfan before he could leave the Wooden Island. If he could directly kill Ningfan and fulfill the request of the sect master of the pill sect, why wouldn't he do it? At that time, he would be able to kill Ningfan, who made the entire anti-Ning alliance wary of him all by himself. Wouldn't that be a great honor to him? As for the heaven opening stone that he gave to Ningfan, couldn't he still get it back after his death? Once Ningfan is dead, who would dare to take the heaven opening stone? Whoever takes it will be unlucky. How could it return to my hands? Besides, if Ningfan is killed by the bad luck of the heaven opening stone, Xiang Bozi would have nothing to say. It's his own bad luck that caused him to encounter natural and man-made disasters. Can he blame me for that? Brother Ning, I feel like old friends with you. If you really need this heaven opening stone, just take it. If you don't take it, it means that you are not giving me face. Old Wu made up his mind. He immediately took out the heaven opening stone, which was emitting black smoke, and passed it to Ningfan. Inwardly, he sneered thousands of times. As long as Ningfan dares to take this stone, he would certainly be turned into ashes by the natural and man-made disasters that would follow. Upon hearing his words, Xiang Bozi and Taoist Mu Song knitted their brows. They had seen through Old Wu's evil scheme. They thought to themselves, this young man is indeed worthy of being the disciple of the Black Luck Old Ancestor. His heart is truly vicious. Xiang Bozi, of course, would not watch Ningfan take away the heaven-opening stone and attract the god-killing calamity. Just as he was about to remind Ningfan, he saw his eyes turn cold. Obviously, he had seen through Old Wu's evil scheme. Thus, he did not say anything more and let Ningfan settle this matter himself. Do you really want to give this stone to me? Ningfan stared at Old Wu with cold eyes. Even though he did not know the origin of the Black Luck sect, how could he not see through the myriad of poisonous curses inside the heaven-opening stone? When others look at the heaven-opening stone, they might only see it being shrouded by black smoke. However, as the Fuli demon ancestor, Ningfan could see the origin of the black smoke directly through it and see its true form. How was this black smoke? It was clearly a series of ancient and mysterious karma lines that intertwined with each other. After being tainted, it would form a divine ability that could taint the luck of an expert and cause others to fall into calamities and tribulations. This Old Wu clearly had ill intentions. Giving the stone to Ningfan was just an excuse. His real intention was to harm Ningfan. Moreover, for some unknown reason, this divine ability that could taint one's luck in the black smoke actually resonated with the Fuli ancestral blood in Ningfan's body to a certain extent. Sigh. This old man has good intentions. Could it be that younger brother Ning doesn't dare to take this stone? If you don't dare to, then let's forget about this matter. Old Wu chuckled coldly. His tone was a little provocative. In fact, he already understood that Ningfan had probably seen through some tricks and would not fall for his evil scheme. He withdrew his hand and was about to keep the heaven-opening stone. Inwardly, he felt bitter because he had lost a chance to directly kill Ningfan. At this moment, a palm with distinct joints suddenly stretched out and pressed on the heaven-opening stone. Didn't I say that I don't want this stone? Since you dare to give it to me, why wouldn't I dare to accept it? I just hope that you won't regret it after you give me this stone. This ordinary voice seemed to carry a sense of supreme majesty. It directly shook old Wu's sea of consciousness and made him feel a sharp pain. He could not help but take half a step back and stared at Ning Fan in astonishment. Ning Fan's palm that was pressing on the heaven-opening stone seemed to be extremely heavy. Even with old Wu's cultivation base, he actually could not shake it off. Strange. What kind of divine ability did this Ning Fan use? Why do I feel a sense of suppression? For the first time in his life, old Wu felt a sense of fear. That kind of fear seemed to originate from the deepest part of his bloodline. For some unknown reason, it actually made old Wu shiver uncontrollably. That kind of hair-raising feeling was like a tortoise who had run amok for many years meeting its natural enemy. Chapter 963. Old Wu's heart shuddered. He knew that he had underestimated this rain-immortal monarch. What shocked him the most was that Ning Fan actually dared to touch the heaven-opening stone with his hand. This was really out of his expectation. One should know that he had refined the heaven-opening stone for a whole month using the dark luck secret technique. Even an immortal king's luck would be slightly tainted if they touched the stone recklessly, causing a backlash and damage. However, Ning Fan's expression remained the same, as if he was not affected by the dark luck of the heaven-opening stone at all. How could old Wu not be moved? Bitter, bitter. This rain-immortal monarch is indeed the successor of ancient chaos. His cultivation base might not be as strong as mine, but he probably has some abilities to resist the corrosion of my dark luck. In this case, even if I give the heaven-opening stone to him, he probably won't be harmed. Let's just forget about it. The heaven-opening stone was held by Ning Fan, and he could not take it back even if he wanted to. Old Wu mustered all his strength and secretly circulated his abilities. His body emitted a faint black light. All of a sudden, he seemed to have infinite strength and almost pulled the heaven-opening stone out of Ning Fan's hand. Ning Fan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he also circulated his abilities. Faint red light shone around his body. Vaguely, his strength was on par with old Wu's. It was hard to tell who would win. Old Wu cursed inwardly. This Ning Fan was not afraid of the corrosion of the dark luck. He was determined to snatch the heaven-opening stone from me. On the surface, however, he put on an amiable expression and said to Ning Fan with a smile, I suddenly remembered that this heaven-opening stone still has its uses. I'm afraid I can't give it to you. Please let go of it and return it to me. Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. Cultivators like us never go back on our words. This stone already belongs to me. You're the one who should let go of it. The ancient demon aura in Ning Fan's body suddenly burst out and shook at old Wu, causing him to let go of the stone. He staggered and took a few steps back before he managed to steady himself. His expression changed drastically. The might of an ancient demon. Xiang Bozi nodded slightly. Taoist Musang had a thoughtful expression. He pinched his fingers slightly as if he was deducing something. After that, he seemed to have understood something and muttered to himself. So this child is actually the descendant of ancient chaos. No wonder. The fact that ancient chaos Grand Emperor possessed the bloodline of a god, a demon, and a devil at the same time might not be known to many low-grade cultivators, but at the Eternal Era level, very few people didn't know about it. Now that his identity as the successor of ancient chaos was known to the public, he no longer needed to conceal his ancient divine, ancient demon and ancient devil chi. Although in this era where the three races had lost their hearts, souls and blood, possessing the bloodline of the ancient demon was a shocking matter. It was not so hard to understand if this happened to the descendant of ancient chaos. Many thanks for the stone, fellow Taoist. With a flip of his hand, he kept the heaven-splitting stone that he had seized and stared at old Wu with an expressionless face. The reason why he was able to repel Brother Wu was not because of his profound cultivation base, but the supreme demonic aura of the Fu Li ancestor realm in his body. When he first saw the heaven-splitting stone, he felt that the black smoke on it was a little strange. It could actually resonate with the demon blood in his body. He was originally from the Fu Li clan, which had the dirtiest luck. Moreover, he had even tainted his own luck and became a cultivator of black luck. Thus, he was not afraid of being tainted by the black luck. That was why he dared to directly place his palm on the heaven-splitting stone. Unexpectedly, after coming into close contact with the heaven-splitting stone, Ningfan actually felt a trace of fear from it. The heaven-splitting stone was actually afraid of him. No. To be more precise, it was not the heaven-splitting stone that produced fear. Instead, it was the black luck on the stone. As soon as it saw Ningfan, the black smoke actually showed signs of submission. It did not dare to hurt Ningfan at all. The feeling that the black smoke gave Ningfan was very similar to the qi on Zili's body. It was extremely similar. With just a thought, Ningfan figured out the crux of the matter. The black smoke that was entangling the heaven-splitting stone actually contained the power of the Sinli clan. This old Wu actually possessed the power of the Sinli clan. This old Wu was not a member of the demon race, let alone the bloodline of the Fuli clan or the Sinli clan. Ningfan was able to determine this after coming into close contact with him. However, old Wu could possess the power of the Sinli clan. There was probably a hidden reason behind this. No matter what the truth was, old Wu's attempt to use the power of the Sinli clan to suppress Ningfan was no different from displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert. Ningfan was the dignified Fuli clan demon ancestor. Why would he be afraid of the power of the Sinli clan? Old Wu's heart pounded. He was not the real Sinli clan. Before Ningfan took the initiative to display his Fuli qi, he could not see through Ningfan's identity. Therefore, he could not understand how Ningfan forced him to retreat. Seeing that Ningfan had taken away his heaven-splitting stone, old Wu could no longer laugh. His face turned gloomy and he said coldly, "Fellow Taoist, aren't you looking down on the owner of this place by snatching my heaven-splitting stone in the boundary of this wooden island?" In his words, he actually wanted to use Taoist Musong's name to suppress Ningfan. "Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. You gave me this stone on your own accord. I didn't snatch it from you," Ningfan said expressionlessly. Old Wu's face turned pale with anger. He had used his master's relationship with him in order to obtain 3 treasures from Taoist Musong. He did not expect that one of his treasures would be snatched away as soon as he met Ningfan. How could he not be angry? If it wasn't because it was really inappropriate to fight Ningfan here, and if it wasn't because Ningfan had a quasi-saint old monster like Xiang Bozi by his side, old Wu would definitely attack Ningfan ruthlessly and take back the heaven-splitting stone with force to teach Ningfan a lesson. No, I can't. I can't attack Ningfan in front of 2 quasi-saints. Just as this thought solidified in old Wu's mind, Taoist Musong suddenly spoke to Xiang Bozi. As soon as Musong spoke, old Wu did not dare to lose his temper on the spot no matter how unwilling he was. Initially, he wanted to argue with Ningfan for a while longer. However, he could only suppress the anger in his heart and think of a way to take back the heaven-splitting stone later. "Old monster Xiang, I'm afraid you didn't bring this kid here just for the heaven-splitting stone, right? Otherwise, you could have come alone." Musong did not care about old Wu's humiliation. He had already agreed to old Wu's 3 requests and repaid the karma of old ancestor Black Luck. As for the matter of the heaven-splitting stone, it was old Wu's own fault. He would not interfere. "Brother Mu, just now, you used your fate connection to deduce something and guessed the purpose of my visit. This kid has been targeted by the dark race. The name of my godly void pavilion is not enough to make them fear me. Only Brother Mu can make them restrain themselves." Xiang Bozi said with a bitter smile. "According to my deduction just now, your disciple Sun Luo is already dead." Taoist Musong suddenly changed the topic. "Yes. That kid is already dead," Xiang Bozi said bitterly. "Ever since I, Musong, secluded myself from the world, I have never cared about worldly affairs. After I secluded myself from the world, I became even more indifferent to the matters of heaven and earth. I even made a great vow that I would never open my eyes more than 3 times before I see the Sacred Heart. Even if my disciple, Emperor Tsang, is in trouble, I would also turn a blind eye to it. In the past, when the dark race bullied your disciple Sun Luo, I had already protected him once. This time, do you want me to make an exception for him again? This matter has indeed put Brother Mu in a difficult position." However, If Brother Mu wants to understand the mysteries of the second ancient map, I'm afraid you really have to rely on this kid's strength. Opening your eyes for him once might not be a bad thing. Xiang Bozi's words made Daoist Musang silent, as if he was thinking. Ning Fan's expression changed slightly. He was a little concerned about the second ancient map in their conversation. Each of the 4 ancient maps had its own extraordinary features. The first map was the immemorial fisherman's Mino. It had been found by Ning Fan and little Demonis before. It could help the first step in cultivating the great Tao of life and death, allowing one to ascend and become an immortal. Now, it was in the hands of the godly Void Pavilion. The second ancient map was called the Golden Sky Black Map. It was said to contain the great Tao of Yin and Yang. It could help a cultivator break through the bottleneck of the immortal Emperor realm. There was an ancient force in southern heaven called the Golden Talisman Palace. It was destroyed because of this second map. Luo Yu had also tried to find the second map, but she could not find any information about it. Unexpectedly, the second ancient map was actually in Daoist Musang's hands. Logically speaking, the second ancient map could only help one attain the immortal Emperor realm. It should not be valued by an expert like Daoist Musang. However, judging from Xiang Bozi's tone, this map seemed to have some other mysteries that could make Daoist Musang study it repeatedly. After a long time, Daoist Musang finally made a decision. However, he did not give Xiang Bozi a direct answer. Instead, he pointed at the sky. Immediately, countless pine needles flew up into the sky and formed a green ring in the sky. That ring seemed to have a great ability that could isolate everything within it. Even if a great battle takes place inside the ring, as long as it does not exceed the limit of the ring, the energy waves from the battle would not leak to the outside world. I need to test this kid to see if he's worthy of me opening my eyes. Little boy Song Shi, enter the ring and fight against little friend Ning. After hearing what was said, a green-faced Daoist child immediately walked out of the group from Musang's disciples. He cupped his hands towards the crowd and flew into the ring in the sky, hovering in midair. This green-faced child had an ordinary appearance. However, he was standing in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back. His entire body was filled with an aura force that made him look like he was stepping on the ancient times. No one should underestimate him. This person was one of the 3 immortal venerables in the temple. He was a newly advanced immortal venerables. However, it seemed like he had also killed immortal venerables in the ancient times. His baleful chi was very strong. Little friend Ning, get on this platform and fight against Musang's disciple. Show him what you're capable of. If you can catch his eye, he will certainly lend you a hand in the matter regarding the dark race. Xiang Bozi turned to Ning Fan and instructed. Ning Fan was not a fool. At this moment, how could he not know that Xiang Bozi had another purpose for bringing him to the Wooden Island? Xiang Bozi wanted to help him find a new backer. A backer that could intimidate the dark race. If the ancient chaos great emperor's Tao is destroyed, Musang would protect him. This was Xiang Bozi's original intention. Ning Fan felt a little touched. Xiang Bozi was neither his relative nor friend, but he had done so much for him. Of course, he would not reject Xiang Bozi's good intention. With a flash, Ning Fan appeared on the green platform. Xiang Bozi's voice resounded in his ears again. Go all out. Let Musang see what you're capable of. Ning Fan nodded his head. He stood 100 zhang away from the green-faced Tao child. His aura force was even stronger than that of the Tao child. Seeing that there was a great battle to watch, all the disciples in the ancient temple turned their eyes to the sky. Even Old Wu, who had a belly full of anger, had the same expression. Old Wu wanted to take a closer look at what kind of means Ning Fan had. Once he gets to know Ning Fan's background, his chances of defeating him in the future would also increase. Of course, if there's a chance, he would like to replace that green-faced Tao child to teach Ning Fan a lesson, and take back the heaven-splitting stone. The green-faced Tao child looked at Ning Fan arrogantly. He lived on the Wooden Island with his master, and never came out of seclusion. Thus, he had never heard of the infamous name of the Rain Immortal Monarch in the outside world. Thus, he naturally did not know that Ning Fan had killed old ancestor De Yun. Even if he knew about it, he would not be afraid of Ning Fan. He had also killed a newly advanced immortal venerable before. With his confidence, Even if he sensed Ning Fan's aura, which was at the level of an eternal tribulation, he was not afraid at all. Even though fellow Taoist is not Senior Xiang's disciple, you can be considered as representing Senior Xiang in this battle. If you lose to me again in this battle, Senior Xiang's disciples will have lost 4 times in a row on the wooden island. In order not to lose too badly, I will hold back a little. The green-faced Tao child on the opposite side suddenly spoke. His tone was rather arrogant. Xiang Bozi had accepted 3 disciples in his life, and all of them had been brought to the wooden island before. When the 2 great emperors, Shen Kong and Su Kong, were young, they had come to the wooden island to spar with the young Emperor Tsong. However, they were defeated by him. Later on, Sun Luo was also brought to the wooden island. However, Sun Luo was still very young at that time. He was defeated by Mu Song's other disciples even without Emperor Tsong's help. Ning Fan was the 4th disciple that Xiang Bozi brought to the wooden island. If he was also defeated on the wooden island, the loss would naturally be attributed to Xiang Bozi's disciples. Ning Fan did not like to talk too much during fights. What made him even more speechless was where did this green-faced Tao child get his confidence from? He even dared to hold back against him. Not only did the green-faced Tao child speak arrogantly, but his actions were also arrogant. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back from the beginning to the end. He actually did not plan to make the first move. Are all of Taoist Musong's disciples this arrogant? Ning Fan shook his head slightly. When he thought of Taoist Musong's eccentric personality, he really might have disciples with different personalities. This person's divine intent is song and so is his Tao. However, what he cultivates seems to be the aloof and arrogant intent of song. That's why he acts arrogantly. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with green light. He easily saw through the green-faced Tao child's background. At the moment when the green light flashed, no one on the scene saw it. Only Xiang Bozi and Taoist Musong noticed it. Xiang Bozi already knew that Ning Fan was a heavenly being realm cultivator. Since he could not see through Ning Fan's background at the 2nd level of the heavenly being realm, he was not surprised. Taoist Musong's expression changed slightly. This young man is actually a heavenly being realm cultivator. No wonder old monster Mu thinks so highly of him. Since the green-faced Tao child was unwilling to make the first move, Ning Fan would not show any modesty to him. He told the green-faced Tao child to be careful, and lifted his finger to shoot out a ray of purple light at the Tao child. Tao weapon is it? This Tao weapon seems to have been nurtured by the heavenly Tao purple chi. However, in the eyes of immortal venerables like me, it's not considered as a powerful weapon. The green-faced Tao child showed a hint of disdain. He opened his mouth and spat out a palm-sized dark green leaf into the sky. As soon as the leaf soared into the sky, it immediately expanded with the wind, and turned into a 100 zhang large. It directly fell towards the memory-severing Tao sword, wrapping the sword in its center. No matter how hard the memory-severing Tao sword struggled, it could not break free from the restriction of the leaf. Fellow Taoist, what other magic treasures do you have? Why don't you use all of them? The green-faced Tao child said proudly with an expression as if he had already gained the upper hand. Ning Fan was slightly speechless. Even if this person cultivated the Tao of aloofness, he was too arrogant and lacked the sense of aloofness. Song Song's aloofness was different from arrogance. The word aloofness was the limit. Song Song's arrogance was only shown to his lonesome self instead of being domineering towards others. That was why it was aloofness. This green-faced Tao child had chosen the wrong path. That leaf was formed by the green-faced Tao child's ability. The Tao law of wood was intertwined on it. It could not hide from Ning Fan's heavenly fish eye. The reason why the divine abilities of immortal venerables were so powerful was because they used the power of the Tao law. As for the power of a sovereign immortal emperor, it was because he possessed the sovereign Tao law, which was much stronger than ordinary Tao laws. It was precisely because of the power of the Tao law of wood that this leaf could easily restrain the memory-severing Tao sword. However, if the memory-severing Tao sword were to break this layer of Tao law, this leaf was not worth mentioning at all. Ning Fan did not waste any more time talking to the green-faced Tao child. Instead, he flicked his finger. Immediately, an endless rain intent came from heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, a light drizzle fell on the entire wooden island. The green-faced Tao child's expression changed slightly. Before he could react, he saw the memory-severing Tao sword that was originally restrained by the leaf turn into a ray of sword light and burst out with a chi sound. It cut the Tao law on the leaf into pieces. At the next moment, the leaf broke into countless rays of green light and dissipated. The green-faced Tao child's eyes turned grim. At this moment, the memory-severing Tao sword was also intertwined with the power of the Tao law. In terms of quality and quantity, it was actually much stronger than the Tao law of wood on the leaf. No wonder Ning Fan could break his pine breath leaf. It turned out that Ning Fan's understanding of the power of the Tao law was even higher than his. Another ear-piercing sound was heard. The memory-severing Tao sword that was intertwined with the Tao law of rain transformed into thousands of illusions and slashed down at him. This time, the green-faced Tao child did not dare to be careless. Instead, he took half a step back and circulated his divine ability. His entire right arm immediately turned dark green, and he directly grabbed at the sword shadows that filled the sky. No matter how the Tao sword transformed, and no matter how the sword rain changed its trajectory, the green-faced Tao child seemed to be able to accurately predict the direction where each of the sword lights would come from. His dark green right palm was not afraid of the sharpness of the Tao sword at all. He lifted his hand and directly crushed the illusory sword lights. The sound of metal colliding with each other constantly resounded from his right palm. It was obvious how hard his palm was at the moment. In an instant, the rain of thousands of swords was all crushed by the green-faced Tao child. Obviously, he could not defeat this newly advanced immortal venerable with his Tao weapon. Ning Fan sighed softly and kept his Tao sword. He did not have any magic treasures with strong offensive power. In that case, it would not be easy for him to win quickly. The green-faced Tao child's expression became even more conceited after his first attack. In a flash, his entire body actually turned into a giant whose body was entirely dark green. Ning Fan had already seen that dark green defense. It was strong enough to resist the sharpness of the memory-severing Tao sword. After turning into a giant, his defense actually increased by a few times. It was incomparably powerful. The Tao sword that was surrounded by a type of Tao law could not break this dark green defense. In that case, he could only use the second type of Tao law at the same time. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with a dark light. All of a sudden, heaven and earth lost all its light and fell into endless darkness. A divine ability that can change heaven and earth? No, it's an illusory technique. The green-faced Tao child was shocked at first. Then he raised his head and laughed heartily. If it's a great divine ability that could change heaven and earth, he would still be slightly afraid of Ning Fan. However, if it's just an illusory technique, he was not afraid at all. He was already close to mastering the heavenly eye of the Buddhist sect. It was enough to see through most illusory techniques. Thus, this technique was nothing to be afraid of. Break. The eyes of the giant that the green-faced Tao child transformed into shot out thousands of rays of golden light, trying to sweep away the darkness between heaven and earth. However, when those rays of golden light fell on the darkness, they were immediately devoured by it. They could not see through the darkness at all. Only then did the green-faced Tao child feel a little shocked. Isn't the illusory technique that Ning Fan used a little too advanced? Even his heavenly eye could not break this technique. Many people look down on illusory techniques because they basically could not cause any real damage. In most cases, they could only serve to confuse the target. Once they are broken, they would be almost useless. However, if they could not break it, the horror of illusory techniques would be revealed. During a battle, a moment of absent-mindedness could determine the outcome of the battle. He was trapped in Ning Fan's illusory technique and could not break the darkness. Ning Fan could have killed him 100 times during that time. Fortunately, even though I have fallen into his illusory technique, I have been cultivating defensive techniques all my life. Ordinary First Tribulation immortal venerables would not be able to break my defense. At least, this battle will end in a draw. It won't be that easy for him to defeat me. Just as this thought emerged in the green-faced Tao child's mind, his giant body was sent flying violently in the next moment. An arrow of blood spurted out from his chest. The darkness between heaven and earth was finally dispelled bit by bit. However, it was not broken. Ning Fan had taken the initiative to remove the illusory technique. From the start to the end, it seemed to be very slow. However, in reality, it only took 10 breaths. The people in the ancient temple finally regained their vision. The first thing they saw was the scene of the green-faced Tao child's giant body falling from the sky, while spurting out blood. They still had a look of disbelief on their faces. There was a ferocious-looking sword wound on the giant's chest. It was so deep that his bones could be seen. It had completely broken the defense of his physical body. His blood splattered across the sky. Ning Fan stood in the sky with a sword in his hand. His Tao sword was intertwined with the light of 2 types of Tao laws. It was extremely dazzling and gave people a feeling of unparalleled sharpness. Even if Senior Brother Song, she encountered a second tribulation immortal venerable, his pine body would not be broken by a single sword strike. This Rain Immortal Monarch actually broke Senior Brother Song, she's strongest defense, with just a single sword strike. 10 breaths. Senior Brother Song, she only lasted for 10 breaths under the Rain Immortal Monarch's attack. Each of Mu Song's disciples began to suck in a cold breath. Old Wu was even more shocked. He was also a First Tribulation Immortal Venerable. Moreover, he was one of the stronger First Tribulation Immortal Venerables. He had fought with the green-faced Tao child before, and he knew that he could not break his opponent's defense with a single move. However, Ning Fan was able to do it. Could it be that Ning Fan's strength was above his? He was an old immortal venerable, who had cultivated for 34 million years, while Ning Fan was just a junior, who had made his name 100 years ago. Could it be that Ning Fan was stronger than him? Chapter 964. Could it be that this old man's 34 million years of cultivation is no match for the rise of a junior in 100 years? Old Wu stared at Ning Fan's Tao sword with his beady eyes. Even though he was unwilling to admit it, he had no choice but to admit how terrifying Ning Fan's sword was. The physical defense of the green-faced Taoist child was definitely incredible. However, Ning Fan was able to break through his defense with a single sword strike. The reason why he was able to do so was because of the power of the 2 types of Tao laws on his sword. In the immortal venerable realm, there were definitely not many people who could use the power of 2 Tao laws. The power produced was definitely not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Since Ning Fan possessed 2 types of Tao laws, his offensive power was definitely one of the best among immortal venerables of the same level. However, there was another more important reason why Ning Fan could recover so quickly. The greatest contributor should be the dark illusion technique that could engulf heaven and earth. That illusion technique was very powerful. Old Wu knew that if he fell into it, he wouldn't be able to break free in a short time without using his trump cards. It was precisely because the illusory technique was powerful that the green-faced Tao child fell into it and was unable to evade. Ning Fan's sword directly broke his defense and sent him falling from the sky. At first, Elder Wu still wanted to teach Ning Fan a lesson, but at this moment, his heart was beating the drum of retreat. He was deeply afraid of Ning Fan. Moreover, he was already hesitating whether he should agree to the sect master of the Pill Sect's request and join the anti-Ning alliance to eliminate Ning Fan. The green-faced Taoist child was bleeding profusely as he retreated from the giant's body and fell to the ground. Although Taoist Musong's eyes were closed, he was clearly aware of everything that was happening in the outside world. He flicked his sleeve in the direction of the green-faced Taoist child, and suddenly, gusts of pine wind blew past, supporting the Taoist child and landing steadily in the ancient temple. This disciple has lost the competition. Master, please punish me. The green-faced Tao child could not be bothered with the bleeding wound on his chest as he knelt before Musong, his face filled with guilt. He had lost face to Xiang Bozi's disciple. He had let down his benefactor. Silly child, it's just a loss. Why take it to heart? However, do you know why you lost so thoroughly? Musong sighed softly and patted the Tao child's shoulder. Disciple doesn't know. Master, please enlighten me. You have taken the wrong path. You haven't discovered this yet, but I believe little friend Ning has. If you were placed in Eastern Sky, you could also be considered an outstanding person. However, in the end, You still can't compare to this child. To you, losing to this child is also good. The solitary and proud pine, if not tempered by wind and snow, is unable to become outstanding. Musang spoke in a language that the green-faced Taoist child did not understand. With a flick of his sleeves, a gust of wind lifted the Taoist child up. The green-faced Taoist child's head buzzed. He felt that his master's last words had enlightened him. He had chosen the wrong path. Could it be that he had really chosen the wrong path? The green-faced Taoist child's expression was blank for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Compared to before, he was much less arrogant. He casually took out a pill and swallowed it to stop the bleeding. After that, he let out a long sigh and cupped his fists towards Ning Fan, who was in the sky. Thank you for showing mercy, fellow Taoist. His injuries were not severe. That sword strike had only landed on his chest. If it landed on his dantian, it would hurt his foundation. Ning Fan had indeed shown mercy. Ning Fan looked at the conversation between Musang and his disciple with deep meaning. Previously, when Musang said that he turned a blind eye to his disciple's difficulties, Emperor Tsang, Ning Fan thought that he was a cold-blooded and heartless master. Now he realized that Musang also had the same silent concern for his disciple. Musang had asked the green-faced Taoist child to challenge him. Although it was a test, it was also to train and guide his disciple. Ning Fan wondered what Taoist Musang thought of him after this battle, and whether he had met his requirements. Just as he was about to walk down the green ring, he heard Taoist Musang speaking to a big-eared novice monk beside him. Little boy of Song country, you should also go and fight this Rain Immortal monarch. The big-eared novice monk who was called was slightly startled. Then he shook his head and said, I'm not a match for Rain Immortal monarch. It's all right. This is your chance to verify the grand Tao of Withered Tree. Even if you lose, I'm sure you will gain something from it. Upon hearing this, the big-eared novice monk no longer refused. Instead, his figure turned faint and appeared in the sky like a phantom. He put his palms together and smiled bitterly at Ning Fan. I don't dare to disobey Master's order. I hope Rain Immortal Monarch can give me some pointers. As soon as he finished speaking, dark yellow light flowed around his body. The hidden aura force was also at the eternal zero tribulation realm, but it was much stronger than the green-faced Taoist child. He was afraid that he was not far away from the first tribulation realm. Moreover, this dark yellow light vaguely contained an extremely strong ability to break illusions. If Ning Fan wanted to use the same trick again by using the dark illusion technique, it would probably be difficult for it to work. The big-eared novice monk continued to mumble some incantations. Suddenly, the world inside the green ring changed. Ning Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. The sky where he was standing suddenly changed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in an ancient pine world out of thin air. In all directions, there were ancient pines that were so tall that they could reach the sky. Moreover, there were endless Buddhist chants echoing in the wind. A divine ability that can change heaven and earth. Green light flickered in Ning Fan's eyes. His spirit sense turned into rain, covering the entire ancient pine world in an instant. In just a split second, he could see through the entire ancient pine world. After the big-eared novice monk dragged Ning Fan into this world, he immediately activated his divine ability. All of a sudden, the ancient pine trees were uprooted from the ground and turned into wood dragons. Hundreds of millions of dragons charged at Ning Fan at the same time. There was almost no place for him to retreat or evade the attack. Every path of retreat was sealed. Not a bad divine ability. If it's a zero tribulation immortal venerable, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand this attack. Ning Fan praised the other party's extraordinary divine ability. Then his body swayed and disappeared, leaving only a faint red light where he stood. All the dragons were stunned. They could not see where Ning Fan was heading to and were at a loss. At the next moment, Ning Fan directly appeared in front of one of the countless dragons. His eyes that were glowing with green light locked onto that dragon. He raised his hand and slashed. It was another slash that was supported by 2 Tao laws. This slash did not have any magnificent sword light, but it directly split the dragon in half. Surprisingly, the big-eared novice monk was hiding inside the dragon's body. The big-eared novice monk was shocked. Obviously, he did not expect that Ning Fan would be able to find him among the hundreds of millions of dragons so easily. Before he could react, he saw Ning Fan's sword slashing at his chest. "Dry dragon mirror, protect me." Seeing that the sword light was about to reach him in the blink of an eye, the big-eared novice monk shouted without any hesitation. All the dragons in the world disappeared, and an ancient mirror with pine patterns appeared in front of him. When the sword light slashed at the ancient mirror, it was strangely absorbed by it. Then, a ray of sword light burst out from the mirror and slashed at Ning Fan. It actually reflected Ning Fan's divine ability back to him. An ancient mirror that can reflect divine abilities? Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn. He raised his hand to block the sword light and slashed at the ancient mirror again. Previously, the sword light that was surrounded by 2 types of Tao laws could not break this mirror. Instead, it was reflected back to him. However, if there were 3 types of Tao laws, this mirror might be able to do the same. This time, Ning Fan used the power of battle yin yang. The boundless battle intent around his body flowed into his sword, causing the number of rays of Tao laws on the sword to increase to 3. It's actually 3 types of Tao laws. Impossible. The big-eared novice monk's expression changed drastically. Before he could react, he heard a cracking sound coming from the ancient mirror. It was forcefully shattered by Ning Fan. The sword light did not lose its momentum, and directly slashed at the big-eared novice monk's chest. All of a sudden, the entire ancient pine world could no longer be maintained and completely collapsed. As for the big-eared novice monk, an arrow of blood spurted out from his chest. He retreated tens of steps in the sky before he could stabilize his body. The injury on his chest was not serious, but he was indeed defeated by Ning Fan. He was not a match for Ning Fan at all. "Thank you for showing mercy, fellow Taoist." The big-eared novice monk smiled bitterly and returned to the ancient temple. He already knew that he was not Ning Fan's opponent, but he did not expect that he would be defeated so easily. Junior brother Song. She had at least lasted for 10 breaths of time in Ning Fan's hands. However, he only lasted for less than 3 breaths and was defeated. Hiss. Senior brother Songwa has even used the heaven-changing technique of 1 pine and 1 country, but he only lasted for 3 breaths of time in Rainlord's hands. The disciples in the temple inhaled deeply again. Old Wu's expression became even uglier. Ning Fan's sword actually contained the power of the 3rd type of Tao law. In terms of offensive power alone, perhaps not many people at the First Tribulation Realm could be a match for Ning Fan. Of course, immortal venerables would not simply attack and defend themselves. If they could not defend against Ning Fan's sword light, they could very well use their attacks instead of defending themselves. However, most of Old Wu's more powerful attacks were related to his dark luck. Unfortunately, his dark luck was restrained by Ning Fan. In terms of defensive means, he did not think that he had any abilities that could block Ning Fan's sword that contained 3 types of Tao laws. If that was the case, he would definitely lose more than he would win if he fought against Ning Fan. As he thought of this, Old Wu's fear towards Ning Fan rose to an unprecedented level. His heart became even more resolute. He would never get involved in the muddy waters of the Pill sect. After all, he and the sect master of the Pill sect were just fair-weather friends. There was no need for him to provoke a ruthless character like Ning Fan for the sake of this person. We have already fought 2 battles. I wonder if Brother Mu is satisfied with little friend Ning's performance? Even though Xiang Bozi asked a question, he was already 80 to 90% sure that Taoist Musong was already extremely satisfied with Ning Fan. Taoist Musong just smiled without saying a word. Ning Fan won both battles. His moves were straightforward and beautiful. Musong was very satisfied with him. Ning Fan cultivated 3 types of Tao laws, and was also a heavenly being realm cultivator. Musong was also very satisfied with him. However, if that was all, Ning Fan still did not have the qualifications to make Musong pay a huge price to open his eyes and challenge the dark race again. What moved Musong the most was his identity as the successor of ancient chaos. Ning Fan's strength was sufficient. However, if he could not do one thing, he would not be able to help Musong complete the research of the 2nd ancient map. Naturally, he would not have the qualifications to make Musong make an exception and open his eyes. The main reason why Musang let his two immortal venerables fight against Ning Fan was to let his disciples suffer some losses. He wanted to use this opportunity to train them. The real test for Ning Fan would still be in the third battle. Old Wu made up his mind that he would definitely take a detour when he sees Ning Fan in the future. As for the heaven-opening stone that was snatched away from him, he would not dare to ask for it anymore. Ning Fan was just too strong. Unfortunately, Old Wu did not know that Taoist Musang would not give him the chance to avoid a battle with Ning Fan. He had already calculated it. Little friend Wu, why don't you go and have a battle with little friend Ning? Taoist Musang said with a faint smile. His words made Old Wu have the urge to curse. Are you kidding me? Your disciples can't defeat Ning Fan and you want me, an outsider, to fight him? Do you want me to be slashed by Ning Fan too? That's the slash of 3 types of Tao laws. I can't take it, alright. Even though he cursed in his heart, he did not dare to say a word on his face. Old Wu forcefully squeezed out a smile and declined. Senior Mu, you must be joking. This Rain Immortal Monarch is very strong. He possesses 3 types of Tao laws. I probably won't be a match for him. Why don't I give up on the third battle? Musang was indeed an eccentric person. He was still smiling just a second ago, but his expression changed in the next second. Humph. I asked you to fight, so you should go. Why don't you give up on the battle like this? Are you dissatisfied with me? Old Wu's forehead immediately beaded with sweat. He hurriedly explained. Senior has given me 3 treasures. How would I dare to be dissatisfied with Senior? Musang was indeed an eccentric person. This time, even if he wanted to avoid Ning Fan, he could only brace himself and fight him. Judging from Musang's intention, it was obvious that he wanted to test Ning Fan. However, he had also included me in his plan. Damn it. My cultivation base is not as strong as him, so I can only be submissive and submissive. How vexing. Forget it. If you want to fight, I will fight. I still have the other 2 treasures that you gave me. I don't have to be afraid of Ning Fan's 3 types of Tao laws. When he thought of those 2 treasures, Old Wu's confidence became much stronger. With a flash, he ascended the green ring in the sky and politely bowed to Ning Fan with a Tao salute. I am Old Wu. Previously, I had a lot of misunderstanding with Rain Sovereign. Now I have no choice but to fight you. I hope Rain Sovereign will show mercy to me. His tone was unprecedentedly polite. Ning Fan was slightly stunned. Old Wu's politeness was not an act. He was really afraid of Ning Fan. That was why he was so polite. With his sharp senses of the second heaven realm, he could feel it. He did not expect that this fellow could still be polite without any change in his expression after he snatched the heaven-opening stone from him. Such a submissive attitude was 1 in a million. Unfortunately, he did not have a good impression of Old Wu. Naturally, it was impossible for him to show mercy. If the 2 of them were to fight, Ning Fan would still use his full strength to defeat Old Wu quickly. Only then could he show off his strength in front of Musang. He was brought here by Xiang Bozi. Thus, he represented Xiang Bozi. Naturally, he had to win some glory for Senior Xiang. Rain Sovereign, be careful. I'm going to use my magic treasure. Old Wu gave Ning Fan a warning with a smile on his face. However, inwardly, he wished that Ning Fan would be defeated by his magic treasure. He turned his hand and a green light flashed in his hand. Then, a small pine sapling that was about a foot long appeared. It was flowing with precious light. It looked extremely extraordinary. Obviously, it was not an ordinary item. Then, Old Wu blew a breath at the small pine sapling. Immediately, the small pine sapling grew with the wind and turned into a 10,000 zhang tall pine tree. It was unknown how many pine needles there were on the giant pine tree. Each of the pine needles was as sharp as flying swords and glowed with cold light. Old Wu changed his hand seal. Immediately, 30 million pine needles flew down from the tree like flying swords and rained down on Ning Fan like a storm. Ning Fan's expression changed and became unprecedentedly solemn. This small pine sapling was not a magic treasure. However, the pine needles that grew on it could be used as flying swords. 30 million pine needles were equivalent to 30 million flying swords. The lowest grade of these flying swords was a void fragmentation realm magic treasure. Even the pine needle swords that were ranked as immortal swords were countless. There were also many immortal swords that had attained the post-celestial grade. Among them, there were even a few pine needle swords that had attained the post-celestial grade of the 12 Nirvana realm. The 30 million flying swords were flying at Ning Fan. Among them, there were countless high-grade immortal swords. How would Ning Fan dare to underestimate them? At this moment, even if he had 3 types of Dao laws wrapped around his Dao sword, it was impossible for him to repel the 30 million flying swords with a single strike. Besides, most of his other abilities were not enough to deal with this situation. If he uses the soaring golden light to evade, he could easily evade Old Wu's attack. However, if he does that, he would leave a weak impression in Daoist Musang's mind. He must win this battle, and he must win it in a domineering manner. Only then could he not bring shame to Senior Xiang's reputation. While thinking, Ning Fan opened his mouth and swallowed the Dao sword into his abdomen. All of a sudden, thousands of rays of red light burst out from his body. He had actually activated the power of his tribulation blood to the maximum. Since he had the body of tribulation blood, the strongest ability he could display was undoubtedly the famous ability of the 7th barbarian god Tagu. The Oblivion Current Technique. It was a great ability that could change heaven and earth. It was the most suitable ability to deal with the current situation. The 30 million flying swords were approaching him. Ning Fan's expression remained unchanged and he raised his right palm. His movement was clearly as fast as lightning. However, in the eyes of the crowd, it seemed to be extremely slow, as if every scene was playing in slow motion. When his fingertip drew across the sky, it easily created a crack between heaven and earth. After that, the entire world began to change. During the 2 years that he had walked out from the barbaric passage, Ning Fan had already studied this technique. Thus, he was extremely proficient in using the Oblivion Current Technique. When he used this technique again, there were no longer any traces of the formation of mountains and seas. Instead, an endless river of Oblivion Current appeared between heaven and earth. The 30 million flying swords that were initially flying at Ning Fan were all swept into the river, unable to break free from it. Old Wu's expression changed drastically. Before he could react, he was sealed under the river by Ning Fan. Similarly, he was unable to break free. What kind of ability is this? Almost everyone in the ancient temple was astonished. Even Xiangbozi and Daoist Musang wore solemn expressions. Those who had some discerning eyes could see that Ning Fan had used a technique that could change heaven and earth. However, the level of this technique was so high that it was beyond everyone's expectation. This technique was definitely at the level of an ancient grand cultivation realm. There was no doubt about it. One should know that even a slightly weaker immortal king would not be able to keep all the flying swords away when facing the 30 million flying swords. However, Ning Fan was able to do so despite being a first tribulation cultivator. Did it not mean that his ability was powerful? This level of power had already exceeded the understanding of the low-grade disciples here. Even Xiangbozi and Daoist Musang did not have many types of abilities of this level. It was even more impossible for the remaining people to have such abilities. The green-faced Daoist child and the large-eared novice monk stared at the black river in the sky with their mouths agape. If they were still a little unconvinced when they lost to Ning Fan before this, they no longer felt the slightest bit of dissatisfaction at this moment. Didn't they see Old Wu, who had a first tribulation cultivation base of 10,000 years, trapped at the bottom of the river like a tortoise? Old Wu's cultivation base was undoubtedly higher than theirs. Even if he faced a second tribulation immortal venerable, he might be defeated, but it was impossible for him to be suppressed and confined like this. If it were them, it would be even more impossible for them to break free from Ning Fan's river. Rain Lord is not an ordinary person. We can't compete with him. The two of them exchanged glances and sighed. On the other side, Old Wu, who was the person involved, had long been scared out of his wits by Ning Fan's ability. Only Old Wu could only feel how terrifying the river water was when he was in the river. He was horrified. This river water could actually devour and destroy everything. Be it his memories or his Dao techniques, none of them could resist the corrosion of the river water. Ning Fan had already shown mercy to him. If Ning Fan attacked him with full force, Old Wu would definitely die in this river. How bitter, how bitter. I didn't think that the Rain Lord would have the divine abilities of an ancient great cultivator. He actually took away my 30 million flying swords in one move, and imprisoned me in this great river. Luckily, I still have the third treasure that Senior Musang bestowed upon me. If I have this treasure, I may be able to escape from this river. Old Wu took a deep breath and patted his storage pouch. He took out a square seal with a golden top and a black bottom. There were patterns of the sun and the moon on each of the four corners of the seal. On the surface, the seal seemed ordinary. However, if one takes a closer look, one would be able to sense the innate qi inside the seal. This treasure was actually an innate magic treasure. It was called the Yin-Yang Square Seal. It was the magic treasure that Taoist Musang used before he attained the quasi-saint realm. It was not an ordinary magic treasure, even among the innate magic treasures. This item was the third magic treasure that Old Wu had asked for from Musang. The only shortcoming of this treasure is that every time I use it, I need to consume a huge amount of magic power. Even with my ancient tribulation magic power, I can barely maintain the operation of this treasure. I need to reveal my ancient true body in order to have enough magic power to activate this treasure. Ning Fan, little brat. Even though your ability is strong, can it be stronger than Senior Musang's famous magic treasure? Old Wu sneered in his heart. He could almost foresee the scene of Ning Fan being defeated by the Yin-Yang Square Seal. At the next moment, Old Wu's body expanded rapidly. His body was shrouded in a 10,000 zhang black light. The dazzling black light made it impossible for others to see his current appearance. His body grew to 1,000,000 zhang in size. However, the river was also strange. The water level seemed to rise along with Old Wu. No matter how tall he became, he could not poke his head out from the surface of the river. This is the ancient true body. Isn't this a divine ability that only immortal kings can cultivate? I didn't expect this person to be able to cultivate it during the first tribulation. How powerful! The green-faced Taoist child and the large-eared novice monk were speechless at the same time. Obviously, Old Wu's ancient true body surprised them. However, after the black light on the surface of Old Wu's body dispersed, the two of them became speechless. It turned out that Old Wu's ancient true body was actually an extremely ugly black tortoise. It was rather rare for a human cultivator to cultivate a demon-type true body. What was even rarer was the degree of ugliness of Old Wu's black tortoise true body. How should one put it? Among the ferocious beasts in the cultivation world, beautiful ones could certainly bring people a sense of beauty. However, ugly and ferocious beasts could also give people a sense of prestige, and make people like them. Old Wu's black tortoise true body, on the other hand, did not have the slightest sense of prestige and ferociousness. The shape of its face was inherited from Old Wu himself. Therefore, its appearance was indeed a little ugly. However, the problem was that this tortoise true body just happened to walk the path of being adorably ugly. Originally, it had small eyes like mung beans. However, after transforming into a giant tortoise, it actually turned into big round black eyes that were shamelessly cute. It also had double eyelids and long eyelashes. As a result, it was very difficult for this tortoise to give people a sense of ferociousness. It could only be said to be adorably ugly. Without a sense of might, it was very difficult for those who liked ferocious beasts to like it. Bitter, bitter. I knew that once I revealed my ancient true body, I would definitely be laughed at by others. I can only blame myself for not having enough cultivation. I clearly wanted to absorb the power of the ancestor of evil, and cultivate the true body of the nine-winged black tortoise. However, I didn't expect my luck to be bad. I made a mistake in my cultivation, and cultivated to such an ugly appearance. The only thing that made Old Wu gratified was that this ugly tortoise body was somewhat powerful. Once it transformed into its true body, its magic power could almost skyrocket by several times. Originally, his cultivation was slightly above the first tribulation. After transforming into its true body, his cultivation was only a hair's breadth away from stepping into the second tribulation realm. With his current magic power, it was enough to activate the Yin-Yang Square Seal. Break for me! The giant tortoise roared. The Yin-Yang Square Seal immediately shook and emitted a mighty force that tore apart the river of oblivion. It actually used the power of a magic treasure to directly break the magical power of an ancient grand cultivator. Chapter 965. Old Wu felt much more confident after his attack succeeded. His gigantic body directly rushed out of the river. When he looked at Ning Fan again, his eyes were filled with disdain. Ning Fan, oh Ning Fan. You have 3 types of Tao laws and the abilities of ancient great cultivators. However, I have the yin-yang square seal. You are still not my match. I will let you have a taste of the true power of this seal. Yin seal phoenix freezing the sky. Old Wu shouted again. For shadows of phoenixes flashed above the yin-yang square seal with towering resentment chi. Then they let out 4 phoenix cries that resounded across heaven and earth. After the first cry, the temperature of heaven and earth plummeted. A moment ago, it was still like the beginning of spring, but in the next moment, it immediately turned into the coldness of midwinter. After the second cry, snow began to fall in the starry sky. After the third cry, the entire river froze in an instant. Even Ning Fan's body showed signs of being frozen. After the fourth cry, Ning Fan's entire body was completely frozen. He no longer had any signs of life, as if he was dead. After the 4 cries, the yin-yang square seal turned into a ray of black light and directly smashed towards Ning Fan's head. If this seal hits Ning Fan, who was in a frozen state, his head would probably be smashed into pieces and his brain would burst. Not good. If this seal hits, even if Rain Lord doesn't die, his physical body will be destroyed. This Old Wu is really ruthless. This seal is a magic treasure that my master has refined for many years. I heard that he killed 4 dragons and 4 phoenixes in order to forge this treasure. All of them were at the immortal emperor realm. This seal has 3 variations. This Yin seal phoenix freezing the sky is the first variation. The 4 cries of phoenixes are the second variation. The power of this attack is truly unstoppable. Rain Lord is in danger. The ancient temple was in an uproar. Xiang Bozi's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. He was afraid that Ning Fan would be in danger. He almost wanted to help Ning Fan block this seal. However, he was stopped by Mu Song halfway. There's no need to do anything. This young man might not lose. Mu Song's eyes that were originally closed opened a little. Even though they were not completely opened, there was a faint purple light flashing between the gaps of his eyelids. He was the only one who could see Ning Fan's current condition through the ice seal. Cold. Very cold. Ning Fan's body felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. That kind of coldness was the condensation of the resentment chi of the 4 immortal emperors. The coldness easily froze his body and his river of oblivion. Even his primordial spirit was eroded by the coldness and almost fell into a state of suspended animation. This seal has such a strong cold power. If it weren't for the fact that I'm the descendant of the yin-yang devil vein, and have cultivated the great 5 elements physique, my primordial spirit would have been frozen by this cold. This sort of coldness wasn't simple coldness. There was actually a trace of energy within it that led directly to the source of the Grand Tao. And it could transform all the yin-attributed energy in the world into coldness that could kill. Soul formation cultivates Tao intent, life immortal cultivates Tao power, fragmentary thought cultivates Tao intent, and immortal venerables cultivate Tao laws. Even more powerful than the Tao law was the sovereign Tao law of the immortal emperor. This seal contained a power that was even more terrifying than a sovereign Tao law. It was the power of the Tao origin, and only demi-saints could come into contact with this level of power. Ning Fan's cultivation base was far from the demi-saint realm. This was his first time coming into contact with the power of the Tao origin. He didn't know how to name this power, but he could tell that this power shouldn't be underestimated. A slight carelessness would cause him to die under this power. I've underestimated this Old Wu. I didn't expect him to have such a terrifying magical treasure with him. Bang! Under the extreme coldness, the eyes of Ning Fan's primordial spirit suddenly narrowed. The yin-yang locket that was hanging on his primordial spirit's neck suddenly emitted rays of strange light. Although the Tao origin of Yin was powerful, one mustn't forget that Ning Fan was the dignified descendant of ancient chaos. What he cultivated was the grand Tao of Yin and Yang. Thus, It had some restraining power against the Tao origin of Yin. As the yin-yang locket was activated, the Tao origin of Yin that was frozen in Ningfan's body was immediately dissolved by the locket. Cracking sounds could be heard. The layer of ice on Ningfan's body turned into ice fragments. His body regained its vitality. As soon as the ice was removed, the yin-yang square seal smashed down on Ningfan's head. It was only a foot away from the top of Ningfan's head. Ningfan didn't have enough time to dodge it. He could only take the power of the seal head-on. Red light burst out from Ningfan's body. The power of the tribulation blood gathered on his right fist. He directly threw a punch at the treasure seal that was falling on his head. As soon as the punch was thrown out, heaven and earth turned red from the power of tribulation sense. The power of this punch was completely comparable to the full power of an ordinary first tribulation immortal venerable. When the fist light and the treasure seal collided, the momentum of the treasure seal was immediately blocked by Ningfan's fist. However, Ningfan was also forced to retreat while spurting out blood in the air. The blood that he spat out was filled with ice shards. Obviously, he was heavily injured by the treasure seal. The power of this seal was beyond his expectation. If he didn't use his full power, he wouldn't be able to withstand this seal. Rainlord, weren't you very powerful just now? Didn't you easily press me to the bottom of the river? Press me again. Press me again. Old Wu's proud and wretched laughter spread across heaven and earth. The yin-yang square seal kept smashing towards Ningfan under his control. Bang! When they collided for the second time, Ningfan summoned his Tao sword. He raised his hand and slashed at the treasure seal. He seemed to have used some kind of special sword technique. Instantly, a ray of sword light shone on the treasure seal. It was like the moonlight that drifted erratically. That ray of sword light was extremely strange. It seemed to have endless power, but also seemed to have no power at all. When it collided with the treasure seal, it was no match for it. Its light was directly smashed into pieces by the treasure seal. As for Ningfan, he was pushed back by the treasure seal for the second time. Once again he coughed out blood and retreated. However, his eyes lit up slightly as if he had confirmed something. What kind of lousy sword technique is this? Its power is actually so weak. Trying to block the attack of the yin-yang square seal with this sword technique is just wishful thinking. The more Old Wu fought, the more complacent he became. He did not put Ningfan's sword technique in his eyes at all. Bang! Bang! Another 3 sounds were heard. Ningfan was pushed back for the 3rd time, the 4th time and the 5th time. For the next few attacks, Ningfan was still using a strange sword technique. He slashed at the treasure seal with a strange sword light. However, he was still pushed back by the treasure seal time and time again. Everyone thought that Old Wu had gained the upper hand in this series of attacks. Only Xiang Bozi and Taoist Mu Song could tell that Ningfan's sword technique was extraordinary. Rumor has it that Great Emperor Ancient Chaos had 5 heaven-defying sword techniques. Could it be that what this young man is using is one of them? Ningfan's first attack was to test the strength of the treasure seal with his fist. As for the next 4 attacks, he used a strange sword technique to attack the treasure seal. You won't have the chance to push me back for the 6th time. After being pushed back 5 times by the treasure seal, Ningfan steadied his body again, and no longer retreated. The time was ripe. It was time to counterattack. Oh my. You're indeed worthy of being called the Rain Sovereign. You're still so confident even after being sent flying 5 times by me. The thing that I like to do the most is to attack those who think that they are outstanding. You said that you wouldn't be sent flying by me for the 6th time, but I'm going to send you flying 100 times, 1,000 times. In Seal Phoenix Freezing Sky, smash me hard. Old Wu Ba became more and more complacent. Just as he was about to activate his treasure seal to attack Ningfan again, he realized that the treasure seal was malfunctioning and did not hit Ningfan. What was going on? In Seal Phoenix Freezing Sky, smash it for me. There was still no reaction. He was unable to activate it. In Seal Phoenix Freezing Sky, In Seal Phoenix Freezing Sky, In Seal Phoenix Freezing Sky. Damn it, why isn't the incantation working? Wu Laoba suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He stared at the yin and yang square seal. It would have been fine if he hadn't looked at it, but once he did, he was shocked. Only now did he realize that there was actually a hideous sword wound on each of the 4 yin phoenix silhouettes on the seal. The sword injury was extremely formidable, and it was actually able to sever the yin Dao quintessence within the yin phoenix's body, causing it to be unable to circulate freely. In this way, the first transformation of the seal was actually unable to be used because it lacked the support of Dao origin energy. What? The Dao origin Dark Phoenix is injured? How is this possible? Could it be the lousy sword technique he used just now actually injured the 4 Dao origin Dark Phoenixes in the treasure seal? What kind of joke is this? Old Wu Ba sucked in a cold breath. One should know that the 4 yin phoenixes were formed by the Dao origin energy. They were shapeless and formless. Even a sovereign great emperor might not be able to hurt them. However, Ning Fan managed to do so with his strange sword technique. How could old Wu Ba not be shocked? However, he did not know that the sword technique Ning Fan used was not some strange sword technique at all. It was obviously one of the 5 yin-yang swords of the ancient chaos era. The Dao Severing Divine Sword. The 5 yin-yang swords consisted of the Heaven Sword Severing Fate, the Earth Sword Severing Force, the Mortal Sword Severing Life, the Divine Sword Severing Dao, and the Ghost Sword Severing Thought. When the 5 swords were used at the same time, there was nothing that they could not cut. They were invincible in terms of offense. It was the great emperor of the ancient chaos era's secret technique. Among them, the one Ning Fan was most familiar with was probably the life-severing sword. He had gained great enlightenment in the 9 Heavens imperial court, and killed countless immortal venerables and ancient corpses. The second most familiar sword technique was the heaven-severing sword. At least he had used it a few times. However, it was his first time using the Dao Severing Divine Sword. Ning Fan did not have much understanding of the Dao Severing Divine Sword. Therefore, its power was insufficient when he used it. Old Wu Ba once thought that it was a weak sword technique. Little did he know that although the Dao Severing Divine Sword looked weak, it actually had the power to sever all the great Dao in heaven and earth. It could sever the Dao origin of the sovereign great Dao, and even the Dao origin of the Dao. This yin-yang square seal had a total of 3 transformations. Old Wu Ba did not have enough magic power, and he could only use the first transformation. He could not use the second and third transformation. Now that the first transformation was broken, this seal could no longer be used. Old Wu Ba had already lost his biggest chance of winning against Ning Fan. Next, it's Ning Fan's turn to counterattack. With a thought in his mind, a black light flashed on his shoulder. A lazy black cat appeared and yawned lazily. However, when Ning Fan raised his right palm and made a grabbing motion in front of him, the eyes of the black cat on his shoulder immediately sharpened. Its body flashed and turned into a ray of black light. Ning Fan caught it in his palm and swallowed it. All of a sudden, Ning Fan's aura force rose steadily, reaching the peak of the first eternal tribulation. Then it broke through the bottleneck and reached the second eternal tribulation. What's going on? Why did Rain Lord's aura suddenly skyrocket? The disciples in the ancient temple could not see through the black cat's background. Thus, they did not know that Ning Fan had improved his cultivation base instantly by using the soul extracting technique. Xiang Bozi and Taoist Musang also observed Ning Fan carefully. Only then did they see through some clues. Even so, they were quite shocked. Obviously, they did not expect that a little cat of the heavenly Dao was following Ning Fan. That black cat is actually the soul of the heavenly Dao. This young man actually managed to extract the soul of the heavenly Dao and keep it as his demon pet. Even quasi-saint realm experts like them were not qualified to be the master of the heavenly Dao. They might be able to extract the soul of the heavenly Dao, but they definitely could not make the heavenly Dao submit to them. However, Ning Fan was able to make the heavenly Dao submit to him. This was really unimaginable. To be honest, when Taoist Musang saw Ning Fan display the Dao-slaying divine sword, he was already very satisfied with this test. However, he was just satisfied. The way he looked at Ning Fan was like how he looked at a junior. However, after witnessing the strange incident where Ning Fan made the heavenly Dao submit to him, Taoist Musong's impression of Ning Fan rose to an unprecedented level. Ning Fan was able to do what he could not. This young man's ability was just too heaven-defying. It was enough for him to treat him as an equal. Old Wu, didn't you ask me to press you to the bottom of the river? I'll do as you wish. At this moment, Ning Fan's aura force skyrocketed. With just a flick of his sleeve, a vast force spread out, directly shattering the ice on the river. The river regained its flow. Then he raised his palm and pressed it down. Old Wu immediately felt as if the world was spinning. His vision blurred and his 1,000,000 zhang large tortoise body flashed, and he was trapped in the river again, unable to break free. Not good. Old Wu desperately activated the power of his eternal true body in an attempt to break free from the river. However, it was all in vain. This time, he did not have the protection of the yin-yang square seal while Ning Fan used the power of the heavenly Tao black cat. His cultivation base skyrocketed. Under such circumstances, how could Old Wu escape from the river? Don't you like being pressed to the bottom of the river? Then just stay at the bottom of the river. Ning Fan suddenly clenched his right hand. Suddenly, the undercurrent at the bottom of the river surged violently. The tearing force formed by the surging undercurrent actually tore countless cracks on Old Wu's tortoise shell. Poor Old Wu. At this moment, he was hiding inside the tortoise shell, not daring to show his face at all. During the eternal tribulation, Ning Fan's power was already terrifying when he used this technique. Now that he had second tribulation realm cultivation base, the undercurrent at the bottom of the river actually brought Old Wu a fatal danger. I'll die. I'll die. This was an ancient grand cultivation realm divine ability. Ning Fan used it with his second tribulation realm cultivation base, and his treasure seal was already damaged. He could not withstand this attack. What made Old Wu even more terrified was that he actually felt a vague killing intent from Ning Fan's body. Ning Fan wanted to kill him. Ning Fan actually wanted to kill him. What kind of joke is this? I didn't do anything excessive to Ning Fan. Why does Ning Fan want to kill me? Why does Ning Fan dare to kill me, an outsider, in front of Taoist Musong, who is the owner of this place? He just wanted to give Ning Fan the heaven opening stone. It was completely out of kindness. Even if there was a little bit of malice in it, it could be completely ignored. Damn it. Ning Fan wants to kill me just because of this. What kind of joke is this? He was just a little ruthless in the battle after that. He wanted to destroy Ning Fan's physical body and sent Ning Fan flying a few times in a wretched manner. It was just a small mistake and it was not unforgivable. However, Ning Fan actually wanted to kill him just because of this. What kind of joke is this? Alright, Old Wu had to admit that what he did to Ning Fan was indeed a little too excessive. This time, he was really going to be in big trouble. This Ning Fan has made up his mind to kill me. This time, I've really kicked an iron plate. At this moment, Old Wu's heart was like dead ashes. He knew that he was probably going to die this time. His master, Old Ancestor Black Luck, said that he had a friendly relationship with Taoist Musong. In fact, they were just acquaintances. Taoist Musong once owed Old Ancestor Black Luck some karma. That was why he came to Musong this time to ask for the 3 treasures. Musong just wanted to use this opportunity to pay off the karma in order to get closer to the perfection realm. Musong did not care about his life or death at all. If Musong helps him, he would be implicated in Ning Fan's karma. Given Musong's personality, he would certainly not do such a thing. After he was trapped at the bottom of the river, Musong did not have the intention to help him at all. This was already enough to explain the situation. Crack, 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 it was the sound of his tortoise shell breaking continuously. Old Wu could feel that his tortoise shell was already on the verge of breaking. If his tortoise shell breaks, he would certainly be torn to pieces by the undercurrent at the bottom of the river. Sigh. Old Wu, am probably going to drown here today with my illustrious reputation. All of a sudden, Old Wu felt that the scene in front of him was extremely familiar. That's right. Many years ago, he seemed to have almost drowned once. How many years ago was that? I can't remember. That time his luck was really bad. When he went to a secret place of an ancient cultivator to search for treasures, the space of the secret place collapsed. At that time, he He was already an immortal venerable, but he was still severely injured by the collapse of the space. On his way to escape, he was unlucky enough to step on a few hundred peerless killing formations that were set up by that ancient cultivator. Finally, he managed to escape from the secret place with severe injuries. However, he was struck by the extremely poisonous smoke of the secret place. His magic power was sealed, and he fell from the sky like a mortal, falling into a huge river on a certain cultivation planet. At that time, he seemed to have been saved by a little cultivator. Otherwise, he would have drowned in the river. After that, he casually gifted that little cultivator with an opportunity and gave him some pointers, helping that little cultivator to cultivate the black luck and avoid a huge disaster. Old Wu smiled bitterly. He could not help but recall the memories that had been sealed for many years. Unexpectedly, those memories melted into the river and were obtained by Ning Fan. When he saw those memories, his eyes suddenly widened, and he actually withdrew his killing intent towards Old Wu. Instead, he was filled with complicated feelings. This Old Wu actually has a karmic connection with Master. Chapter 966. At the bottom of the River of Oblivion, memories of the past flowed quietly like water. The starry sky was the starry sky of the northern heaven immortal realm, and the location was the main planet of the Black Demon sect, the Yin-Yang star. One day, a spatial rift suddenly tore open in the sky above the Yin and Yang star, and a black-robed old man covered in blood and tattered clothes fell from the sky, smashing right into the Devil River at the foot of the Black Devil Mountain on the Yin and Yang star. The old man who fell from the sky was Elder Wu, who entered the secret area to search for treasures. However, due to various unforeseen events, he was seriously injured and his magic power was sealed. After falling into the demonic river, he couldn't even stop his breathing and almost drowned. At that time, there was a black-robed young man with a fierce expression sitting cross-legged on the riverbank. When Elder Wu was about to drown, the black-robed young man fished him out of the river. Elder Wu decided to thank the black-robed young man. He had a lot of good things on him, but they were all refined by his dark luck. If he gave them to the young man, it might even harm him. In order to repay the karma, Elder Wu racked his brains and finally discovered that the black-robed young man had been schemed against by a powerful immortal emperor. He immediately thought of a way to repay the young man. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to see through the black-robed young man's schemes, but Elder Wu was the successor of dark luck, and had a deep understanding of the Tao of fate. In the southern heaven immortal realm, there is an immortal emperor called the ruler of fate. He has a good reputation in the southern heaven, and is always regarded as a good person. However, the immortal venerables, know the true face of this emperor. This emperor is the most sinister and ruthless. He has schemed against low-level cultivators all over the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. Since I started cultivating, I've met many cultivators who have been schemed against by this emperor. However, because I don't want to be tainted by karma, I've never saved anyone. Today this child saved me, so I'll return the favor and save him. If his karmic luck continues on his path of cultivation, it will surely be seized by the luck-wielding emperor. Only if he's like me and cultivates the devil Tao of dark luck, would he have a chance of survival. This kid can be considered to be lucky to have encountered me, but it's also the beginning of his lifetime of misfortune. Oh right, I forgot to ask this little benefactor's name. Little benefactor, may I know your name? I, Han Yuanji, am the man who will become the next ancestor emperor of the northern sky. Remember this name well. 1,000,000 years from now, this name will definitely resound throughout the northern sky. His tone was extremely arrogant. Ha! Brat, you really have a big mouth. You want to become the next North Heaven Ancestor Emperor? Haha. If you can become the next North Heaven Ancestor Emperor, I can become the Immortal Emperor. Io, what are you doing? Thump. The black-clothed youth turned around and kicked Old Wu back into the river. Gulp gulp, brat, you're courting death. Gulp gulp, how dare you kick me? Gulp gulp, do you know who I am? Gulp gulp gulp, forget it, forget it. I admit defeat. Quickly pull me up. I've already drunk a lot of river water. I'm really going to drown. I beg you, my little ancestor. Humph. Since you dared to mock my dream, You deserve to drink a few more mouthfuls of water." Although he said so, the black-clothed youth who was in his rebellious phase still pulled old Wu out of the water. After that, old Wu helped the black-clothed youth. A karmic connection was formed just like that. However, this old Wu had only met the black-clothed youth once. They did not have a deep friendship. They did not have any interactions after that. If it wasn't because he almost died in the river again, old Wu would not have remembered this somewhat similar past. Ning Fan was slightly speechless. He had never thought that this old Wu actually had a karmic connection with the old devil. There's no mistake. Isn't that young man with a face full of killing intent, a body full of thorns and clamoring to become the next North Heaven ancestor emperor my master, Han Yuanji? Speaking of which, the black-clothed youth's appearance was extremely handsome. Vaguely, he also had many of the characteristics of the old Han Yuanji. The only difference was that he lacked the wretched aura that came from his bones. Time is indeed a merciless butcher's knife. It could actually turn a living, beautiful young man into a wretched chrysanthemum face. What Ning Fan did not expect was that the old devil had also been schemed against by the immortal Emperor Master Luck. However, because of old Wu's help, he eventually cultivated his dark luck and got rid of the immortal Emperor Master Luck's scheme. This old Wu had actually done his master a favor. Ning Fan let out a long sigh. Old Wu had done his master a favor. Just because of this, it was impossible for Ning Fan to kill him. However, he also could not let this person go so easily. This person had set up a vicious scheme against him and tried to kill him. If I let him go just like that, I would certainly be nurturing a tiger that will bring about future troubles. The river of oblivion could seize people's memories. From the river, Ning Fan saw the scene where old Wu and the sect master of the Pill sect interacted. I didn't expect that the sect master of the Pill sect would actually build an anti-Ning alliance to deal with me. Even though I'm willing to let this old Wu go for the sake of my master, I can't guarantee that he won't have the intention to take revenge on me in the future. The human heart is unpredictable. This old Wu doesn't seem to be a good person. If I let him go, how should I deal with him if he has the intention to take revenge on me in the future? Old Wu, do you remember Han Yuanji? Ning Fan suddenly looked at the river of oblivion and asked, Han Yuanji? What Han Yuanji? Let's not talk about this anymore. Rain Sovereign, oh Rain Sovereign, please be merciful and let this poor Taoist live. If this poor Taoist can escape this calamity, I'm willing to be your slave. Old Wu was already waiting for death. When he suddenly heard Ning Fan's question, his desire to live was immediately aroused and he begged for mercy. Even though he could still vaguely remember the incident where he almost drowned in the past, he could not remember the name of the black-robed young man who saved him. Well, it was no wonder. Old Wu had been unlucky all his life. He had encountered many disasters, and the people who saved him were innumerable. Among them, there were many juniors and even mortals. How could he remember all of them clearly? Old Wu was too lazy to care about whether Han Yuanji was Han Yuanji or not. At this moment he only had one thought in his mind, and that was to survive. The Rain Lord was really too scary. He had been running amok for many years and no one had ever dared to kill him. It was because his luck was already at the 8th grade. Even if a quasi-saint tries to kill him, he would also be affected by his luck. That was why no one dared to kill him after living for so many years. It was his first time meeting someone who was not afraid of his luck at all. Only Ning Fan dared to touch his heaven-splitting stone casually and kill him in a domineering manner. He was not afraid of the revenge of his 8th grade luck. How could he beg the Rain Lord to spare his life? Rain Lord, please do me a favor. If you are willing to spare my life, I am willing to give you the heaven-splitting stone, the 4 emperors Arhut Pine and the Yin and Yang 4 seals. Compared to his life, these 3 treasures were not worth mentioning at all. He was the current sect master of the Black Fate sect. Even a quasi-saint would have to be wary of his 8th grade luck. If he lacked any heavenly ingredients or earthly treasures, he could totally ask those major forces for them. As long as the items were not too excessive, there were not many major forces who would refuse his request. Ning Fan ignored old Wu. He was still thinking about how to deal with him. He certainly could not kill him. With the old devil's fondness for old friendships, if he killed his benefactor, the old devil would certainly be bitterly disappointed. Even if this so-called benefactor did not even remember who the old devil was. However, if he let him go, how could he guarantee that old Wu would not have the intention to take revenge? Seeing that Ning Fan did not answer for a long time, old Wu only thought that his bargaining chip was not high enough to move Ning Fan. After cursing Ning Fan's greed in his heart, old Wu gritted his teeth and said, Does the Rain Lord think that these 3 treasures are not enough? How about this? If you are willing to let me go, I am willing to give you all the tens of millions of years of accumulation of the Northern Heaven Black Fate sect. In addition to the 3 treasures, it should be enough to make up for my previous offense. Ning Fan still did not answer. Compared to the accumulation of the Black Fate sect, he was more interested in finding a foolproof plan to solve the problem of old Wu's revenge 8 days later. In this world, a master and a disciple could turn against each other. A father and a son could become enemies. Facing a ruthless and treacherous person like old Wu, Ning Fan could not trust him at all if he did not have something to hold him back. Seeing that Ning Fan still did not answer, old Wu became anxious. He thought that this Rain Lord was really too greedy. He had already offered all the accumulations of the Black Fate sect to Ning Fan. Those were things that even immortal emperors would be tempted by. However, Ning Fan was still not satisfied and refused to let him go. He really wanted to see what kind of greedy master could actually have such an insatiably greedy disciple. I have never heard of how greedy Great Emperor Ancient Chaos is. Could it be that he will only spare my life if I give him my natal soul and serve him as my master? Damn it! A natal soul is an important thing. How can I? While old Wu was cursing in his mind, he suddenly thought of something. That's right. Isn't there another way? Even though a natal soul is important, if it can save my life, why not give it to me? If I give him my natal soul and serve him as my master, he certainly won't be willing to kill me. My strength is not weak in the first place. Moreover, I have the 8th grade dark luck on me. Even the secret races have to be wary of me. Isn't Ning Fan troubled because of the matter of the dark races? If he can take me as his servant, it will be greatly beneficial to him. He certainly won't refuse such a suggestion. Old Wu's mind raced. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this method was feasible. He had been submissive all his life. He did not really reject the idea of becoming someone's servant. After making up his mind, he immediately said to Ning Fan, Fine. I admit my defeat. I am willing to give up my natal soul and serve you as my master. In that case, will you be willing to spare my life? Ning Fan's eyes flickered. He had complicated the problem. To deal with a ruthless devil lord like old Wu, wasn't his usual method to threaten him with his life? If he takes away old Wu's natal soul, he would certainly not dare to have any evil intentions. All the problems would be solved. Of course, old devil was indebted to old Wu. Ning Fan would certainly not treat him as a servant. He would still be polite to him. What Ning Fan needed was just a restriction. It would be enough if old Wu would not do anything evil. All right. If you hand over your natal soul, I can spare your life. Old Wu's face immediately lit up when he saw that there was hope for his life. He was afraid that Ning Fan would go back on his words, so he hurriedly opened his mouth and spat out his tortoise natal soul. That natal soul was then taken away by Ning Fan. From now on, old Wu's life or death could be decided by Ning Fan. Old Wu's life could be considered to have officially ended in Ning Fan's hands. After removing the River of Oblivion, cleaning up the battlefield and dispersing the Black Cat's Dao Soul, Ning Fan took away the 4 Emperor's Arhut Pine and the Yin Yang Square Seal. Then he brought old Wu, who had returned to his original form, and descended into the ancient temple. The 2 of them stood one after the other. Old Wu's skin was extremely thick. He did not feel that it was shameful to be afraid of death. In the world of cultivation, it was normal for the weak to submit to the strong. Ning Fan was the only nemesis he had met in his life. It was not shameful to be his servant. Besides, I've heard of this Ning Fan before. It is said that this person is extremely stubborn and never knows how to be flexible. If he was in my situation, he would definitely not beg for mercy from the enemy. He would only fight to the death for his boring dignity. Hehe. I'm afraid that Ning Fan won't be able to match my ability to endure humiliation and stay alive. In this aspect, he is inferior to me. This Ning Fan is stronger than me, but he doesn't have the ability to deter the secret races. He only managed to make them slightly afraid of him because of the reputation of his master, Ancient Chaos. On the other hand, I can make the secret races fear me with my own ability. In this aspect, Ning Fan is inferior to me. I can cultivate the eternal true body in the first tribulation, but Ning Fan can't. He is still inferior to me. Everyone in the cultivation world is afraid of me, but he is hated by everyone in the cultivation world. He is still inferior to me. I have a mustache, but Ning Fan doesn't even have a beard. He is still inferior to me. In this case, it seems that Ning Fan is inferior to me in almost every aspect. He is really pitiful. The more old Wu thought about it, the more complacent he became. He actually looked at Ning Fan with a sympathetic gaze. In terms of the method of spiritual victory, there were really not many people in the cultivation world who could be compared to old Wu. I wonder if Senior Mu Song is satisfied with my strength? Ning Fan bowed respectfully to Mu Song and asked in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. He was brought here by Xiangbozi. He had already won 3 rounds in a row, and he was confident that he did not embarrass Xiangbozi. He believed that even someone as strong as Mu Song would not dare to look down on him. Little friend, you have won 3 rounds in a row. Moreover, you managed to block the first transformation of the Yin-Yang square seal with your cultivation base at the first tribulation realm. Moreover, you have the heavenly Tao soul following you. What right do I have to be dissatisfied with you? Mu Song chuckled. Then he changed the topic and asked, I have just made a divination. Little friend, you seem to be being pressured by the dark race recently. Do you need my help? What's the condition? Ning Fan asked back. He had seen through Daoist Mu Song's personality. This person had always been in seclusion and was unwilling to get involved with anyone's karma. It was absolutely impossible for him to help Ning Fan deal with the dark race for no reason. This old man likes straightforward people who speak their mind. Of course, I won't help you unconditionally. It should be said that this is an exchange. Have you heard of Sun Luo? Yes, I have. Due to some reasons, Sun Luo had offended the dark race. Even if Xiangbozi sacrificed his eyes, he couldn't protect him. After that, I made an exception and opened my eyes for the first time. I agreed to fight against the 3 quasi-saint realm elders of the dark race at the end of the starry sky. In the end, I gained the upper hand. That was why the dark race was afraid of me and agreed to let Sun Luo go. When Daoist Mu Song talked about the past, he did not show any signs of boasting. It was as if it was just a trivial matter. Ning Fan, on the other hand, was moved. This Daoist Mu Song was indeed impressive. He could actually fight against the 3 quasi-saint realm elders of the dark race alone, and even gain the upper hand. In the Dharma ending era, he was definitely a first-class expert. Don't look down on the dark race just because of my achievements. The dark race doesn't have just those 3 quasi-saint realm elders. Daoist Mu Song's expression suddenly turned solemn, as if he had recalled something in the past. However, he did not tell Ning Fan about it. After a moment of silence, he continued, Do you know why I helped Sun Luo? Could it be because Sun Luo helped Senior with something? Ning Fan made a guess based on Mu Song's personality. That's right. Sun Luo asked me to help him because I owe him karma. It's not because of Xiangbozi's favor. By the same logic, if you can't make me owe you karma, I won't help you. 10 days later, I will show you something. If you can help me by then, I can make an exception and open your eyes for the second time when you need it. In these 10 days, I must seriously prepare for this matter. You can stay on my wooden island for a while first. Even though my island is small, it has 7 great forbidden areas. You can't enter the first, second, and third forbidden areas because your cultivation base is not high enough. As for the other forbidden areas, you can go in and out as you please. No one will stop you. Ning Fan nodded his head. It seemed like he could only stay on the wooden island for 10 days. Not everyone would be like Xiangbozi, who would help him regardless of the gains and losses. Old monsters whose cultivation base has reached Musang's level were usually unwilling to be involved in karma. That was why many quasi-saints chose to live in seclusion and not show themselves in the four heavens. If there are no benefits, these old monsters would not participate in any battles in the cultivation world at all. If I want to get Taoist Musang's help, I can only depend on my performance 10 days later. Chapter 967. Xiang Bozi was called away by Musang. It seemed like he was busy preparing for the test that would take place 10 days later. On this night, Ning Fan stayed in the guest room of the ancient temple, waiting for the test that would take place 10 days later. Well, it was not like Ning Fan was just waiting idly. As soon as he had some free time, he entered the profound Yin world. He planned to properly deal with the 3 treasures that he obtained from Old Wu: the heaven-opening stone, the 4 emperors' Arhut pine, and the Yin-Yang square seal. In the profound Yin West world, the sky above Ning Fan's immortal cave had been opened up. There was a forest of copper pagodas floating in the air. If one takes a closer look, they would realize that all of the copper pagodas here were the pagodas sealed by the passage of time in the void. At that time, Ning Fan originally planned to take these pagodas after killing Yin Mo. Before he departed, however, the eyeball changed his mind and handed them to him in advance. There were 52,000-year-old pagodas. There were 9 10,000-year-old pagodas. With these pagodas, Ning Fan could directly use the time that was sealed in the pagodas to save a lot of time when he wanted to do something that required time. With the power of the barbarian god's punishment, Ning Fan directly entered one of the 1,000-year-old pagodas. The first thing he did after entering the pagodas was to use the heaven-opening stone to repair the god-destroying shield. This heaven-opening stone had been refined by Old Wu by using the dark luck secret technique. Others would have to be extremely careful when they touch this stone. However, Ning Fan was not afraid of the dark luck in the stone at all. He circulated the power of Fu Li and wiped away all the dark luck in the stone with a wave of his hand. Then he opened his mouth and spat out the god-destroying shield from his body. Looking at the cracks on the shield, the scene of the battle with Yin Mo that day was still vivid in his mind. With Ning Fan's current cultivation base, this shield was enough to defend against the attacks of an 8th Tribulation Immortal Emperor. If he could repair it, he would undoubtedly have one more trump card when he travels in the Eastern Heaven. The method to repair a heaven-opening treasure was very simple. As long as it was nourished by the power of the heaven-opening stone, it would be able to repair itself. The only troublesome part was that the repair speed of the heaven-opening treasure was very slow. Fortunately, Ning Fan had a lot of time-sealed pagodas with him. Thus, he was not afraid of wasting time. In the space of the copper pagodas, Ning Fan found a place with the richest spiritual qi, and placed the god-destroying shield and the heaven-opening stone together, allowing them to repair themselves. After that, he would stay in the pagoda for 1,000 years, waiting for the god-vanquishing shield to be repaired. While waiting, he decided to deal with the other 2 treasures. The first one he dealt with was the 4 emperors' Arhut pine. It was an extremely rare pine tree. The pine needles that grew out of it could be used as flying swords. Presently, this pine sapling had already grown 30 million pine needle swords. Amongst them, there was a total of 9 pine needle swords that had attained the rank of 12 postnatal nirvana. If Ning Fan casually took out any one of the 9-12 nirvana pine needle swords, it would be considered as an extremely high-grade magic treasure when used in a fight between immortal venerables. If Ning Fan summoned the entire 4 emperors' Arhut pine like Old Wu did, and used all 30 million flying swords to kill his enemies, even an immortal King Realm expert would not be able to withstand an attack of this level. The 30 million pine needle swords could be released as a group or taken out as a single Dharma treasure. With this pine tree, Ning Fan's lack of magical treasures could be said to have solved his urgent problem. Apart from that, the 4 Emperor Luohan pines had another amazing trait. They were living creatures and could continue to grow. Just like the 7 treasures wondrous tree, the 4 emperors' Arhut pine needed to be watered by Tao Spring in order to grow continuously. The more the pine tree grew, the higher the grade of the pine needle swords on its crown would be. Theoretically speaking, as long as Ning Fan had enough Tao Spring to water the tree, It would be enough for all the 30 million flying swords on the tree to advance to the innate realm. When that time comes, Ningfan could summon 30 million innate flying swords to kill his enemies. Even an incipient divine being would have to retreat after witnessing such a scene. Of course, this kind of thought was just a thought. It was really a little unrealistic. The growth of the 4 emperors' Arhut pine required an innumerable amount of Dao spring. It was unknown how much Dao spring was needed to grow an innate flying sword. Even if he used up all the Dao spring in the illusionary world, he would not be able to produce 30 million innate flying swords. Speaking of which, if I have the time, I should purchase some Dao spring to water the 7 treasures wondrous tree. When the 7 treasures wondrous tree grows, it can produce fruits which can help me improve my cultivation base. Compared to the 7 treasures wondrous tree, the growth of the 4 emperors' Arhut pine is not as important. Of course, cultivation base was more important than magic treasures. If there is a Dao spring, Ningfan would choose to water the 7 treasures wondrous tree first before watering the 4 emperors' Arhut pine. Ningfan refined all 30 million pine needle swords. In this way, he could use them to attack anytime he wants in battles in the future. After refining the pine needle swords, Ningfan took out the yin-yang square seal and studied it carefully. This was the 3rd treasure that old Wu Ba gave him. It had a total of 3 transformations, and each of them was stronger than the previous one. Among them, old Wu Ba had sent Ningfan flying 5 times with just the first transformation of this seal, forcing Ningfan into a tough battle. If it wasn't because Ningfan knew the heaven-defying ability of the Dao-slaying divine sword, and cut off the circulation of the Dao origin of this seal, he would probably have been defeated by old Wu Ba. The destructive power of this seal was much stronger than the Oblivion Flow technique and the 30 million flying swords. After refining it, it could become the first offensive innate magic treasure that Ningfan possessed. Previously, I slashed at this seal 4 times and injured the Yin Phoenix within it. If I want to use this treasure, I need to repair it first. The yin-yang square seal was not a treasure that could open the heavens. It could not repair itself, and there was no need to use a heaven-defying item like the heaven-opening stone during the repair process. In the space of the copper pagoda, Ningfan used 10 years to repeatedly temper this seal with the 11 adoration true fire in his body and countless immortal ores to repair it. In the next 990 years, Ningfan only did one thing, and that was to refine this seal and comprehend the 3 transformations contained within it. The first transformation of this seal was called the Yin Seal Phoenix, freezing the sky. Even with old Wu Ba's cultivation base, he needed to summon his ancient true body to perform this transformation. Ningfan's current cultivation base was not strong enough to perform the first transformation. Only after merging with the Black Cat's Dao Soul could he barely achieve it. The second transformation of this seal was called the Yang Seal Dragon Strikes Fire. With Ningfan's current cultivation base, he could not perform the second transformation even if he merged with the Black Cat's Dao Soul. The reason why Ningfan could not comprehend the third transformation of this seal seemed to be because his cultivation base was not strong enough. After 1,000 years, the God-exterminating shield had absorbed all the power of the heaven-opening stone and was completely repaired. Ningfan kept the God-exterminating shield back into his body. From now on, he would have the strength to protect himself even if he was chased by an 8-tribulation immortal emperor. After the space of the Copper Pagoda collapsed, Ningfan returned to the profound Yin West world and temporarily planted the 4 emperors' Arhut pine beside the Tree of 7 Wonders. After that, he returned to the guest room and rested for the night. The next morning, old Wu Ba came to Ningfan's room and waited. He seemed to have something to tell Ningfan, but he was afraid to disturb Ningfan's rest. "Come in. You don't have to be so restrained in front of me," Ningfan said politely. Hearing Ningfan's summon, old Wu pushed open the door, walked in and said flatteringly, "I have an important matter to report to Master. It's about the anti-Ning alliance." Old Wu Ba's face was full of pride and he called Ningfan Master very smoothly. "Tell me in detail. What's going on with this anti-Ning alliance?" Even though Ningfan had seen some fragments from old Wu Ba's memory, he still wanted to hear the details from old Wu Ba. Old Wu Ba had just acknowledged Ningfan as his master. He was eager to make some contributions and quickly told Ning Fan everything he knew. The leader of the anti-Ning alliance was the sect master of the Pill sect. The alliance had yet to be established, and it was still in the preparatory stage. After all, Ning Fan had just returned to the Eastern Heaven for a few days, and the Pill sect had just decided to establish an anti-Ning alliance specifically to deal with Ning Fan. Master, don't underestimate this old monster Dan just because his cultivation level isn't high. This person's pill concoction technique has reached the acme of perfection. As early as 10 years ago, he had already advanced to the 9 Revolutions Gold Core realm. What's more shocking is that this person used some unknown method to touch the bottleneck of the sovereign pill concoction realm, not long after he advanced to the Gold Core realm. Today, there are only a few Gold Core realm pill concoction masters in the 4 heavens. I don't know if there are any sovereign pill concoction masters. His skill in pill concocting was enough to make him a rallying force. Furthermore, the Darksiders coveted his master. Because of that, quite a few eccentrics responded to Patriarch Pill's call to join the anti-Ning alliance and make things difficult for his master. Among them, there are no lack of immortal venerables. There are 3 immortal venerables whose names I know. They are all famous immortal venerables in the Eastern Heaven immortal world. Hearing this, Ning Fan frowned slightly. It seems like this sect master of the Pill sect can't be underestimated. Are there any immortal kings in the alliance? There aren't any. After all, old monster Dan has yet to truly step into the sovereign pill concoction realm. Master's master, the ancient chaos great emperor, has yet to truly extinguish his Tao. Most of the immortal kings are cautious. They won't easily get involved in this kind of muddy water. Old Wu Ba recalled and answered seriously. There aren't any immortal kings, is there? Ning Fan's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Master, you don't have to worry. The alliance is still in the preparatory stage. 3 months later, the anti-Ning assembly will be held in the Pill sect to discuss the establishment of the alliance. 3 months later, huh? Ning Fan's eyes flashed with a cold light. The grudge between him and the sect master of the Pill sect had been going on for a long time. It was time to put an end to it. 3 months later, all the people who wanted to deal with him would gather in the Pill sect and hold a grand anti-Ning assembly. If Ning Fan comes to the Pill sect 3 months later, I wonder if he can eliminate all the cultivators in the Eastern Heaven who harbor evil intentions in one fell swoop. When old Wu Ba met Ning Fan's cold eyes, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He thought to himself, will this malefic star run to the Pill sect and start a massacre 3 months later? Speaking of which, it had only been a night since he last saw Ning Fan, but old Wu Ba actually had an illusion. After a night, Ning Fan's cultivation base did not improve at all. However, the pressure that he gave off seemed to have become much stronger. The reason was naturally because Ning Fan had repaired the god exterminating shield. Unknowingly, it gave old Wu Ba an even heavier pressure. Old Wu Ba, on the other hand, did not know about this. He only thought that Ning Fan still had some strength left after defeating him. Thus, the fear he had for this cheap master of his immediately increased. It's tough. It's really tough. Old monster pill, oh old monster pill. You've provoked such a malefic star. You better pray for your own good fortune. This time, I can't stand on your side anymore. Perhaps, I might even have to help my master to destroy your Pill sect. After all, we don't have any karma between us. Killing you won't have any negative impact on me. Old Wu Ba unscrupulously threw the sect master of the Pill sect, whom he had a friendly relationship with, to the opposite side. By the way, I have one more thing to ask you. Where did the evil ancestor's corpse of your Black Fate sect come from? Ning Fan changed the topic and asked. To answer Master's question, my master, old ancestor Black Fate, found it by accident when he was roaming the demon heaven. Old Wu Ba's heart skipped a beat. He was secretly surprised that Ning Fan knew about this, but still answered his question truthfully. Ning Fan pondered for a while. From old Wu Ba's memories, Ning Fan saw many things. He even saw the existence of the evil ancestor's corpse in the depths of old Wu Ba's memories. The Black Fate sect was located in the northern heaven immortal world. The location of the sect was hidden in the depths of the starry sky. In that place, the corpse of the evil ancestor was actually sealed. Be it old Wu Ba or his master, old ancestor Black Fate, both of them needed to absorb the black luck of the evil ancestor during their cultivation. Only then would they be able to cultivate the power of black luck that could shake the four heavens. In old Wu Ba's memories, black luck was also divided into different grades. Old ancestor Black Fate divided the black luck into 9 grades, which corresponded to the grade of the 9 colors of immortal luck. Old ancestor Black Fate was an immortal emperor realm cultivator. However, his luck was only at the 7th grade. As for old Wu Ba, it seemed like his luck was already at the 8th grade. The 8th grade of black luck corresponded to the 8th color of the immortal luck. As long as the grade of one's luck was lower than old Wu Ba's, they would be affected by his black luck. However, it was just an effect. For cultivators like Xiang Bozi, even though he had not cultivated to the 8th color of the immortal luck, he would not be afraid of old Wu Ba. At most, he would just be wary of him. With Xiang Bozi's cultivation base, if he snatches or kills old Wu Ba's belongings, it might bring him a lot of trouble. However, his life would not be in danger. If I use old Wu Ba's 8th grade of black luck, I can create some trouble for the dark race. However, it's still not enough to deal with them. At the end of the day, improving my own cultivation base is the most important thing. Only by becoming stronger can the dark race not dare to bully me and others dare not humiliate me. Ning Fan's ancient god and ancient demon cultivation base were stuck at the bottleneck of shedding void. As for his ancient devil cultivation base, there was still room for improvement. Currently, he had 4 main methods to improve his cultivation base. The first method was to consume pills, Dao fruits and other heavenly ingredients and earthly treasures. The second method was to cultivate the 27 types of yin and yang. Every time one of them was cultivated, it would greatly improve his cultivation base. The third method was to water the tree of 7 wonder treasures and consume the fruits produced by the tree. The fourth method was to improve the cultivation base of the female cultivator in the child relic. The Tao of wood on this wooden island is really strong. Since I still have to stay on the island for 10 days, I might as well go out and comprehend it. Just as Ning Fan had this thought, a visitor happened to arrive. It was the large-eared monk who was defeated by Ning Fan previously. After exchanging some pleasantries, Ning Fan found out that this person was the second disciple of Taoist Musang. His Dharma name was Songgua. This time he came under the order of his master, Taoist Musang, to bring Ning Fan around the wooden island. My master has given me an order. He said that fellow Taoist Ning is the successor of ancient chaos. Therefore, you will most likely be interested in the Tao of wood of our wooden island. Therefore, he ordered me to be your guide and bring fellow Taoist Ning to the 7 great forbidden areas of the wooden island to comprehend it. If you can obtain any fortune from there, it will be considered as fellow Taoist's capability. Monk Songgua's tone was very polite. Even though he had lost to Ning Fan once, he did not show any resentment. His temperament was pretty good. The 7 great forbidden areas, huh? Ning Fan's eyes turned slightly serious. According to his senses, there were a total of 7 places on this wooden island. The Tao of wood was the strongest among them. They should be the 7 great forbidden areas that Songgua mentioned. He originally wanted to comprehend the Tao of wood of the wooden island. Thus, he naturally would not reject Monk Songgua's suggestion. Thus, Monk Songgua brought Ning Fan and old Wu out of the ancient temple, and walked towards a towering ancient pine tree in the depths of the pine forest on the wooden island. It was an ancient pine tree with slightly purple bark. Vaguely, it was emitting an extremely terrifying aura force, causing the area within 100 steps from the tree to be like a vacuum zone. No one was allowed to get close to it at all. The soil under the pine tree was a little moist. The surface of the soil would occasionally roll a few times, as if there were living creatures moving under the soil. As soon as they sensed Ning Fan's arrival, 12 mudmen drilled out from the ground. Their faces were filled with killing intent. All of them locked onto Ning Fan and old Wu. Each of the mudmen actually had the cultivation base of a newly advanced immortal venerable. They were tasked to guard this place and protect this pine tree. However, after Monk Songgua shouted, "Retreat!" The 12 immortal venerable mud men drilled back into the ground one after another. The ringing of a bell can be heard inside this pine tree. It was personally planted by my master. If you come within 100 steps of it, you will be able to hear the ringing of the bell. However, the ringing of the bell is erratic. The closer you get to the ancient pine tree, the louder the ringing becomes. If you don't have the cultivation base of an ancient immortal venerable, you certainly won't be able to walk further than 100 steps. This is the first forbidden area of my wooden island. However, it is also the weakest of the 7 great forbidden areas. As soon as he finished speaking, Monk Songwa took a step forward, and was the first one to walk into the range of the ancient pine tree. In a flash, he was already 90 steps away from the ancient pine tree. Just as he stepped into the range of 100 steps, the ringing of a bell suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. The ringing of the bell seemed to be coming from within the ancient pine tree. At the same time, it also seemed to be coming from the boundless void space that was extremely far away. Ning Fan was clearly standing nearby, but he could not tell where the ringing of the bell actually came from. It was as if every place in this world could be the source of the ringing of the bell. At the same time, it also seemed like there was no ringing of the bell in this world in the first place. Everything was just an illusion. Therefore, there was no trace of the ringing at all. As soon as the ringing of the bell rang, Monk Songwa's face immediately turned pale. He let out a muffled groan as if he had suffered some kind of injury. Without saying anything else, he immediately activated all of his magic power to resist the ringing of the bell. Under the intense consumption of his magic power, he still took 5 steps back continuously. Only then did he manage to stabilize his body with great difficulty. He took a deep breath and moved his body again, moving 10 steps closer to the ancient pine tree. However, the next ringing of the bell caused him to take 5 steps back. Just like that, he slowly walked to the bottom of the ancient pine tree. From start to finish, it took him 149 breaths of time. When he arrived at the bottom of the ancient pine tree, he had almost exhausted all of his magic power. All of it had been consumed when he was resisting the ringing of the bell. Then, a miraculous scene appeared. Monk Songwa did not use any method to recover his magic power. However, the ancient pine tree spread out a layer of green light screen and enveloped him. Then, the magic power in his body began to recover at an astonishing speed. This is the power of the Tao Law of Wood. Ning Fan's eyes turned cold. The cultivation of the Tao Law could add many abilities to a cultivator. For example, the cultivation of the Tao Law of Rain increased Ning Fan's senses. The cultivation of the Tao Law of Battle made his willpower stronger. The cultivation of the Tao Law of Darkness increased the power of his illusory techniques. The Tao Law of Wood could also bestow a cultivator with a certain ability. That ability was the endless growth of magic power. The recovery speed of immortal venerables who cultivated the Tao Law of Wood was more than 2 times faster than immortal venerables who cultivated other Tao laws. Of course, in terms of offensive power, the Tao Law of Wood was not as strong as other Tao laws. There were advantages and disadvantages. The Tao Law of Wood was really not a Tao law that was good at attacking. Fellow Taoist Ning, fellow Taoist Wu, the two of you should give it a try too. Let's see how many breaths you can use to reach the bottom of this pine tree. Monk Songwa simply sat down cross-legged under the shade of the pine tree and said to Ning Fan and Old Wu. Upon hearing his words, Old Wu was instantly eager to give it a try. The reason why he had stayed on the wooden island for more than a month was to enter the 7 great forbidden areas of the island and comprehend the Tao Law of Wood. Unfortunately, even though Taoist Musang had given him 3 treasures, he did not allow him to enter any of the forbidden areas. This time, thanks to Ning Fan, the people of the wooden island actually allowed him to get close to the ancient pine tree and comprehend the Tao Law of Wood. How could he let go of such a rare opportunity? It seems like being Ning Fan's servant is not completely without benefits. Legend has it that when Taoist Musang was young, he had obtained 3 drops of the true essence of the building wood. He used one of them to ascend to the throne of the great Emperor Zhongmu. The second drop was given to his disciple, Emperor Tsang, which allowed Emperor Tsang to comprehend the Tao Law of Wood. Unfortunately, He could not truly comprehend the power of the great Emperor Zhongmu. As for the third drop, Musang divided it into 7 parts and sealed them in the 7 ancient pines on the island. Then he planted a divine ability in the ancient pines, turning the 7 ancient pines into the 7 great forbidden areas of the island. Old Wu's heart was filled with excitement. This was a chance to comprehend the true essence of the building wood in the ancient pine tree at a close distance. If he was lucky enough to comprehend some of the Tao law of wood from this place, his strength would certainly improve by a lot. Old Wu's cultivation base was 1 tribulation higher than Zen Master Songhua. With just a leap, he moved to the 80th step of the ancient pine tree. Even when he was shaken by the bell, he only took 4 steps back. In this way, he only took 5 steps back and arrived at the foot of the ancient pine tree. It only took him 26 breaths from start to finish. His movements were much easier than Zen Master Songhua's. As expected of an ancient venerable immortal, he actually only used 26 breaths to walk 100 steps. Zen Master Songhua admired Old Wu greatly. He was looking forward to Ning Fan's performance even more. Since Ning Fan's strength was above Old Wu's, he would probably use a shorter time. When Old Wu arrived at the shade of the ancient pine tree, he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and enjoyed the green Buddha light shining from the ancient pine tree comfortably. The Buddha light contained the qi of the true essence of the building wood. It contained the supreme Tao of wood. If he could comprehend even a trace of it, it would be an unparalleled opportunity. He greedily breathed in the faint fragrance of the wood in the Buddha light, afraid that he would miss a trace of it. Ning Fan was speechless when he saw Old Wu's reaction. He took a deep breath and similarly moved forward 100 steps in a flash. Even though his combat power was high, his true cultivation base was actually slightly weaker than Old Wu's. With just a leap, he only moved to the 82nd step of the ancient pine tree. Then a bell rang. Even with Old Wu's cultivation base, he would have to take 4 steps back to withstand the sound of the bell. Ning Fan, on the other hand, only swayed slightly. Golden light flashed around his body, and he did not move half a step back. Hiss! Only a 2nd tribulation immortal venerable can remain unmoved in the first forbidden area. This Rain Sovereign did not use that strange black cat to raise his cultivation base to the 2nd tribulation immortal venerable realm. How did he manage to do that? Zen Master Songhua's eyes widened in surprise. He felt that the Rain Immortal Venerable Realm's hidden strength was far beyond his expectations. He could not be measured with common sense at all. Old Wu, on the other hand, was even more certain that the pressure he felt from Ning Fan when he woke up early in the morning was not an illusion. It had only been a night, and Ning Fan's body seemed to have undergone a tremendous change. At this moment, Ning Fan actually gave Old Wu a feeling that he could not defeat him no matter what. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.